recommendation for a workshop that prior board had, and that board decided at the time, too much trouble, too much time, we're busy, don't want to go forward. That was the majority view, it all stopped like 5 years ago. I did try to do an update to see if any of the cities that I had surveyed back then had changed their ordinances since then. The one that I found that had updated it was Golden. And they had done an extensive memo from their staff to their board about their noise ordinance. They had complaints. They had their decibel level, I forget, it was like 92 decibels or something during the broader time, the less strict time it was allowed. And they had complaints from their residents. They lowered it. They sent a noise consultant around to actually measure decibels at several different music venues around town and made recommendations. And I emailed one of their staff people and said, did the revisions work? I haven't heard back, but Mayor Rogan emailed her counterpart in Golden, and I think the response was fewer complaints. It seemed to work pretty well. So that's how this stuff came from. And the draft ordinance was taken almost verbatim with minor changes from a mountain town in Arizona that had dealt with these issues, and their ordinance at the time just struck me as pretty well written. And so I just borrowed it, made a couple of changes. I think I slightly lowered their decibel limits and sent that around as just a discussion point at the time. I wasn't intending to suggest that as a final, let's adopt an ordinance. It was just a conversation starter. It remains that.
And I think, one of the challenges is finding a corollary, because Lions is sort of a special case. Golden's noise ordinance may be working great, but they don't have a concert venue like we have, as far as I know. So it's kind of tricky because we are, almost a different color.
And it's also a two-party, but even if you draft the most scientifically correct and, best research noise ordinance, you still have the related issue is, what are you gonna do to enforce it? What's your enforcement policy gonna be? And that's not really addressed in my drafts and stuff, and that's an important part of it. What steps do you take to enforce it? Who does it? What's step number 1, 2, or 3 for both the complaining party and the venue that has a complaint? So
Yeah.
that needs to be worked into the discussion as well.
Well, and I think in terms of, input into a noise ordinance, I think this really does need to be a cooperative effort between our business community, our residents, our law enforcement who may be enforcing it, so I would, as much as it will probably lengthen the amount of time it takes to get an ordinance on the books, I think getting input from concerned parties so that it's an ordinance that actually, works for everybody. Not everybody might like every single thing about it, but I think, and noise experts, I think, Trustee Browning, as you pointed out.
So that's what you said they did in Golden, right? They had a sampling of the noise. So isn't that really our first step? Is to find somebody who can go around and take the dB readings at various venues during various times to find out what the noise level actually is from a prescribed distance, not 25 feet.
We could do that. We went through this once before, but here's the thing. From my backyard, which is probably a half a mile from the planet, I can hear music, the planet playing this day.
Oh, I hear it too.
Where somebody who actually is physically closer to the planet cannot. So this is the tricky part that we ran into last time, is the geography of our town is so weird that there are these like canyons of noise that can be heard, one place or another, and so.
Yeah, one possible answer to that is that you do the definitive measurement at the receiving property. And it may differ from around town as to how well noise travels to that part of town, but that's the measuring stick, and that puts ultimately the risk on the venue owner. If you happen to have a venue that happens to carry noise of a particular canyon more efficiently than another venue, you may have to keep your sound lower than the guy down the street. That's one option. You account for those variances by where the particular properties are located, and in distance too. I mean, the biggest problem we've had was the what was the predecessor to the Diner Bar Lions then.
Yeah.
And, people were there within, 30 yards of the venue. That makes a difference too. And so you have to take those factors into account. And I will mention that in years back 5 years ago, I had checked with the Grace Brothers, would they be willing to contribute their knowledge to advise us in getting an ordinance drafted and how things should be measured in reasonable levels. And they said that they would, and I had talked to them again recently. Available. So we happen to have some really top-notch sound engineering experts here in mind, and I think in this process, we should use them if they're still willing to help us.
Does staff have a recommendation as to how to move forward? How would you like the process to go?
Well, we wanted to hear your discussion first to see if you wanted to talk about a task force or an ad hoc committee, or, first of all, see if there's, we haven't really had direction yet, even if you want to change it. So we thought this, since it's a short time, was a good time to just, hear, just the original thoughts from people, and then who do we want to involve? And in what format do we want to do that? Is there a couple of trustees that want to take this on and lead and put together? Is this something you want staff to take on and come up with some recommendations? Is it something we want to host a town hall on specifically? That's one way versus a committee. Brandon?
Yeah, I do want to provide just another kind of piece of information, which is relevant to this discussion. From a legal perspective, is that there is a current appeal of the Colorado Supreme Court on the issue of what is the authority of local governments to even do a noise ordinance. There's a case called Hobbs versus City of Salida. Full disclosure, my law firm also represents the City of Salida. But this case predates my involvement with them. And basically they adopted verbatim the Colorado Noise Abatement Act, with the exception is they allow permits to exceed that. And the complainant in that case said that the fact they were deviating at all from the Colorado Noise Abatement Act was preempted. That was a violation of state law. At least the district court and the Court of Appeals said that, no, you're wrong, that we can, do whatever you want with that, use as a model and kind of modify it as necessary. But it did get taken up to appeal to the Colorado Supreme Court. So we could be doing a lot of work and have the rug kind of pulled out from under us. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do this. We should be cognizant that's kind of operating in the background as well.
Yeah, and CML's, the executive board voted to sign on to that.
It's at the briefing stage at the Supreme Court. So.
Yeah, I want to say last month decided to issue cert on that. So I don't think they're in quite yet to brief it. Yeah, I think there's probably a schedule for, I can ask Erica Rogers, the attorney doing that for Salida, but I can give an updated export being where we're at on that case.
Well, and I think that's really great information to have, because we certainly don't want to expend a lot of staff time and effort and community time and effort in doing something that the Supreme Court says is moot, essentially.
One of the things we could do in the meantime, and staff has offered, we can do this certainly, is put, if there's communities that we think are somewhat comparable, we can reach out, get their ordinances, put them into some form of a spreadsheet so that whoever looks at this has some ideas. And then also, I believe the sheriff has offered to take a look at what other communities within Boulder County do. And how they are implementing.
Email.
Oh, okay, I might miss that too.
And I haven't gone through them. It's basically every town or city in Boulder County, and then I just got other jurisdictions that the judge sits on, and also like Estes Park, Grand Lakes, so similar communities like Lions. And basically everything I haven't read through them all yet. It's just confusing, and it's a lot of it's a certain distance and also decibel readings. And like you said, it could be 100 yards away from, but depending on where you're located in town, it can be higher versus someone who's 50 yards away. This is how the town's makeup is. And another thing too that I've got complaints on is like vehicle, and like I know we have like engine repair and stuff like that in someone's house, but it's just it'd be hard for us to enforce, but just to some of the complaints we've got are just loud bicycles or like motorcycles or engines coming through, you know, and a lot of the other jurisdictions have like a motor vehicle noise ordinance too. But how do you measure that?
Do we
That's
have,
gonna be the hardest thing is measuring it.
Well, yeah, and you know, by the time you measure it, they're already gone.
Right, and so it's just like the J breaks, like you have to hear it, you know, be there and see it, you know, but it's also something that's not confusing and easy for our deputies to enforce, because, you know, we have so many, yeah, we have our assigned deputies up here, but when they're off or whatever, you know, the deputy that's new or hasn't worked on it in a while, it's like, you know, we have so many different ordinances from Superior, Netherlands, county, stuff like that is like what, in order for them to enforce it, they gotta kind of, you know, understand it. So make it, so it's not hard to understand to them as well.
What does the county do? I have looked.
So I haven't read it, it's pretty long, but it's, I added it in those emails, but I don't think I put you on it, Brandon.
Okay, it's fine.
But, it's a decibel reading. And honestly, if I had to go find a decibel reader, I don't know where one is at. So we don't have any in Lions. Right, but it has to
It has to be
be,
certified.
it has to be a certified
Certified.
decibel reader. And I think Superior might have gotten some, but I know in our sergeant's office at our headquarters, there's one or two there, but
And we recently bought them for Los Animas, so I can, through the sheriff's office down there, so
Yeah.
there's definitely resources to get the right ones.
that's where the Grace Brothers can help you too.
Yeah.
So that might be another thing to consider as we move forward, is if we do go with decibels, what will be the cost? You know, is it something we can just have a certified or certified calibrated decibel reader at the substation that people pick up, or they're gonna have to be one in each vehicle?
we could just have one. We'd only need one for town. We just leave it in the substation.
Yeah, but then you might miss other things too, right? If you're driving by.
And I think it's, and I know some of you mentioned it, but is to get a task force, right? Offer it up, like, you know, if you want to be a part of it, I think we get, you know, business owners, especially that have live music or, you know, that may be affected in this, and also, you know, locals that live around those areas, just to get their input so people feel like they're heard and that they have, you know, get their buy-in to this. So, because of course we can't, you know, make an ordinance that's gonna please everybody. You know, but if we have support, like people's input and, you know, get their buy-in, then at least, you know, some of it might be acceptable to them versus, you know, well, you guys didn't ask us for our opinion type thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd also mention to save a lot of time for staff and board and everybody else, if you look at that memo that the Golden Town staff did, they did a survey of a lot of jurisdictions around the Denver metro area. So you don't have to go check it. That was all done as of about, what was that, 2 years ago, something like that.
Oh,
So they did a lot of the work. I looked at, I don't know, 8 or 10 of them a couple of years ago, including some music towns that you knew of. So and I checked those, and I think Golden was the only one that's changed since then. So there's been the survey of what other towns are doing already. And one other thing, a couple of things I mentioned that we need to focus on. One is that the existing noise ordinance has no date or time restrictions at all. A lot of people think that the noise ordinance has something to do with what time the music venues have to stop, you know, doing outdoor amplified music. It does. It's not mentioned in there whatsoever. It's silent. We have a outdoor overlay district, 2 of them. We modified those, let's say 2021, 2020. Unfortunately, for some reason, the modifications that we did have not yet made their way into the online code. So if you go to the Lions Municipal Code online and see what's there, you're not going to get the current rules. And there are 2 districts downtown. There's the restricted district and the open district. The open district has no time limits. The open district is what includes main stage, a lodge, whatever diner bar may become if they do outdoor music if you can. The restricted district, pretty much in terms of outdoor music venues just includes what at the time was the Stone Cup and is now Moxie. That's the only time restrictions there are. And if you look at these ordinances, most of them have day and time restrictions, and the typical pattern, and they differ in the numbers, is Monday through Friday, you have an earlier cutoff. Saturday, Sunday, you can go later. But that's what I think we're trying to take what's an extremely restrictive, impossible to comply with noise ordinance, 25 feet from the source of the sound for amplified music, and liberalize it a bunch. But that ordinance doesn't address time and day limits, and if we put day and time limits in there, we're actually, in that respect, making it more restrictive. So it's not all going one way or another, and the other thing I think is that as to the timeline, outdoor amplified music pretty much stops here by mid-October, late October, because it's too cold. And it starts again in May, June, thereabouts, so I think in terms of trying, if we decide to get something done, that's what we ought to keep our eyes on, is trying to have something done by the next outdoor
Due to
music
the
season.
winter, yeah.
Yeah,
Because one complaint I'm dealing, I'm sorry, Bert.
Right. I'm just curious about how important this conversation is to the community, and we're hosting a town hall meeting next week at the library. I don't know how well attended that will be. I hope it will be well attended, but I think that would be a really good question to ask
Yeah.
participants who show up. How do they feel about the current noise ordinance, and do they feel strongly about us revisiting that? I just don't remember any public survey or outreach around this issue.
And I think we haven't done any, I think that's a great idea, and I think that would be like the first step, right? It wouldn't be the only time we ask for input,
Right,
but I think, we do want to get input from the whole town.
Right.
Not, not any particular neighborhood or set of folks.
I mean, we know from the Riverbend procedure that it's important to a lot of people.
well, to those people, but I
But-
think the broader,
But remember, Lionsden, it was important to a lot of people there too, and we've had complaints about
well,
other
it feels
venues
very
as well.
localized depending on the venue.
It is, but it's a townwide issue. And I can tell you, it's very important to the outdoor music venue owners who say, unless they have outdoor music during the summer, they're not gonna survive. So it's important to a lot of people. But I think it's a great idea, is throw it out there at the town honestly, because this is something
Yeah.
that's being talked about and is probably coming in some form or not coming in.
Well, and I'm wondering too, would it make sense to even consider having a calibrated reader at the venues? Because it sounds like that's what you're suggesting, is
No.
measuring the decibels at the venue.
No,
So at the recording parties.
at the receiving property.
Okay,
So the person who's saying, hey, I think this is too loud, then the deputy would show up with a meter. If that's the way that we decide to go, I think that we're a long way from deciding what the best way to go might be.
Yeah.
And if we can't find a town in Colorado that's a good corollary for us, I think we should look out of state, there's gotta be some.
And that's one of the reasons I took that small Arizona town. I have to look back at it. They were a mountain town in Arizona, a little bit bigger than Hines, but not huge either. So that was kind of the source of that drive. That's one reason I looked at it.
Go ahead, Andrew.
If you all would like, we can put together, we can tabulate several different ordinances into a table, like Tori was saying. And that way we can see, how things are regulated, but then how they regulate. That would help.
Yeah, it might, so that'll come up later when we do discussion direction, but I think that's a solid idea, thank you.
Does Telluride have any noise ordinance?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I think so, but
Yeah, and I'd be curious to know with Telluride too, like how they manage the festivals versus the venues.
theirs is different. I looked at that. Their ordinance, like most of these ordinances, Denver's as well as ours, and I'm pretty sure Telluride's, and I mean, they generally exempt events on town property or sponsored by the town. And Telluride's festivals are in a town park. So, the summer concerts, for example, in Sandstone Park, some people may think they're too loud at times, but they're in a town park, so they're exempt from the ordinance. That's fairly common. But, and I think the theory is the cities and the towns have control of what happens on their property. If something gets too loud, they have the ability to say, no, don't do that again. No drums after 8 o'clock, whatever. So,
Interesting. Look at Newport Jazz Festival. It's at a state park.
Yeah, it's kind of constantly evolving in some towns. Morrison, where Red Rocks is, has its own regulations, but they used to do like 50 shows a year, and now they do 150, and they've had problems there, I think. haven't they?
Yeah, so
Brandon.
Red Rocks is actually in the city and county of Denver. It's a Denver mountain park.
Right,
And so my very first case out of law school was representing Denver against Morrison and noise ordinance issues. And so what we did for the city and county is we sent out sound engineers in all the different neighborhoods, which were represented, which were saying there were issues. Got some very interesting results back in terms of what was actually happening. And basically went into an IGA with Morrison saying these are the limit, how many shows, the limitation of each show, so on and so forth. It's kind of a compromise, but so it is a city and county property though. I did 2 different lawsuits.
just for, I've said it before so many times, but just to be clear, our existing noise ordinance is amplified music. And it doesn't distinguish between indoor and outdoor amplified music. Some people think it's just outdoor music, but it's not. If it's audible 25 feet from the source of the sound, it's deemed unreasonable. That means literally if you're walking on the sidewalk past Oscars and music coming from inside, it's amplified music, and you can hear it, it's deemed unreasonable. That's what our noise ordinance is. And it basically opens up any form of amplified music, especially outdoor, but also indoor, to a complaint, and the presumption is that it's unreasonable. And if we're a town that values, the music community, it doesn't fit with what we do. It's impossible essentially to comply with if you have amplified music. And it's been my position for years that it's ridiculous and we need to change it. What we change it to, we get input from homeowners who want nothing but acoustic music anywhere in lines, and we get input from venue owners who might want to have a Led Zeppelin tribute band every weekend. We try to find a middle ground that makes sense by looking at what other places have done and what's worked and what doesn't work.
Well, this is gonna be up for discussion and direction later.
Yeah.
On the agenda, because we know we don't make any decisions in workshops. Any other questions for staff prior to closing up the workshop? All right, well, we'll revisit this later on, hopefully not too late. Then both of you are here for the same thing.
And they can give input during audience business.
Yeah, and if you would like to give input during audience business tonight, we would love to hear that.
And that's right at the beginning.
I don't feel we have, when it's the big, planned bluegrass events, festivals, big events in town, I don't feel like we get those noise complaints at all. It's just those one-off ones that, on a Tuesday night, or I'm working with the local that their neighbor decided to put a stage in their backyard and have like amplified loud concerts. And I'm like, I'm surprised people aren't calling in on this. And he's like, well, Lions is that community of music and art and they're not playing unreasonable hours most of the time, but it's they've tried everything they can to mediate it, and it's finally like to that point where it's not working. So, but that's, I think that or, someone's doing construction at, whatever time, or, it's just those one-off things. I don't think it's the actual big festivals is a huge issue, but
No,
if we're gonna redo this, we gotta do it right.
yeah,
We're not doing it again in a few years.
nobody wants to do this again. Most of us probably don't really want to do this, but.
That's been the problem, that it's a tough thing to do, and
It's
nobody's
tough.
ever really wanted to tackle it, because it takes a lot of time and effort, and so we've always put it off, and we get things where, we saw what happened with Lions Den, we've seen the complaints about, Riverbend, and the most recent, with their complaints recently about an event at Black Bluegrass, so. It's come up enough times that it needs to be discussed, I think.
Brandon, your best guess is to when the state will deal with this spring.
I would think probably January, February, you'd probably see a decision, I think, maybe. But I can get more information on that. I don't do appellate anything, so I'm not the best person to ask.
Yeah, I can ask CML too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What they think.
Either Erica Rogers in our office is doing that lawsuit, so.
Okay.
I can ask.
I know Superior's dealing with, HOA, some HOAs in Superior have bought like these huge towers that measure sound. And they call and complain, they want us to enforce the noise of airplanes. And we're not doing that.
How do
because
you
move-
suggest you do that?
move
You
next
can't
to an
FAA
airport, you know, and it's, so that's what, Superior's dealing with, and it's.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. I will say that I recently, Los Animas adopted the decibel-based sound ordinance for very similar problems that Alliance has. And it still hasn't worked to fix the issues, just because there's reluctance to enforce it. There's there's still lots of disputes, and the courts don't want to deal with it, the sheriff's office doesn't want to deal with it, it's just, it's not fixed out, solved all the problems, let's put it that way.
Okay. All right. Well, glad we solved that. Okay. We'll close up the workshop. We'll take a 10-minute break before we start our regular meeting. Okay.
River.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can- Oh, it is 7.
It's 7. Fire. But after the grass, yeah, the grass.
We give my report back to beat up as far as. Oh, yeah. There are trees. Yeah, that's all you. That's what. Yeah. We said we just.
You guys are good.
Pine trees growing literally.
It was your last meeting, it was like 3 or 4 feet.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
That's why.
Yeah.
We have a cute turtle. Okay. The girls in too much fun with the AI. This is around the night, so our dogs.
Okay, everybody, evening, thank you for not making me use the gavel. I will call the regular Board of Trustees meeting to order on September 16th, 2024. We have the roll call, please.
Mayor Rogin,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Williams,
Present.
Trustee Daddy,
Present.
Trustee Lowell,
Present.
Trustee Browning,
Present.
and Trustee Delman.
Present.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, everybody. Before we do read the land acknowledgement in have a moment of silence, I think everybody is probably aware that former Mayor Nick Angelo was in a pretty serious car accident and he has some fairly serious injuries. My understanding is that he's doing okay, that he retains his sense of humor, which will come as no surprise to anybody. But I'm also sure that we all want to throw some good thoughts and wishes his way for a rapid and complete recovery. We must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. We'll take a moment of silence. Thank you, everybody. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
One second.
Anything anyone would like to change? I would like to remove item 3 under boards and commissions, Sustainable Futures Commission. I heard from the chair late this afternoon, he's out of state and would like to request that we do that update in November. November? Okay. Do I need a second on that?
Do amend the agenda, yeah.
Yeah, is there a second?
Second.
Let's vote on the amendment.
Motion passes unanimously.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll vote on the agenda as amended.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. All right, now is the time for audience business. We are in person only. So when the clerk calls your name, if you've signed up, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Then you'll have 4 minutes. We ask that you address the entire board and not one person, and that you keep your comments germane to town business. After everybody speaks, the board will then have an opportunity to respond, and staff also will have an opportunity to respond. So who is first?
Because Leslie Reynolds,
4 minutes, yeah. You ready? Yep. Thank you. Thank you, for giving me this opportunity. I'm Leslie Reynolds. I am the current president of the Lions Regional Library Board of Trustees. And I am coming to. I'm so sorry. Could you state your address? I'm sorry, 114 Stone Canyon Drive. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. I forgot. You'd think I remember, you just said that. I am coming to invite you all to join us. The Board of Trustees of the library are going to have a Lions Library celebration, a community gathering on Wednesday, October 16th from 5:30 to 7. We hope that you will come and bring your friends and family to meet the Board of Trustees for the library, to learn about library services you may not be familiar with, and enjoy some treats. Am I forgetting anything?
Man.
Yeah.
Jill Sparks, 2169 Apple Valley Road, immediate past president of the library board. A couple of things that are going to be highlighted with this presentation. Trustee Browning has agreed to make a short presentation about the history of how we got the library. We now have a system where the public will be able to access the community room 24/7. We're going to be unveiling that and training the community on how to do that. And we hope to have both friends of the library and TAG participate in the overall presentation. So please come, please invite your friends and let them know it's going to be a great library celebration for the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
Yes. Just wanted to ask on the hours again, October 16th, what hours?
5:30 to 7 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you so
There will
much.
be cake.
Well, and 5 candles.
And yeah, because the building will be 5. Yes.
Really?
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Okay, who's next?
Steve, Sims.
Evening, Mr. Sims.
Good evening, Steve Sims, 809 Fifth Avenue. I'd like to thank you first for your work and discussion that you had about the Apple Valley Water Treatment Plant property and was watching that and following that. So thank you for your time that you put into that. Also, thank you for your time on the noise ordinance. I'm grateful that you're taking it up. It's been work for prior administrations and boards. So appreciate your time and effort into that. And my one comment on the workshop was that if there is any type of technologies, automation, kind of like in the city of Boulder, they have the flash cameras at the intersections and so forth. And then they can do automated, whatever they do behind the scenes on that. If that kind of technology is available, if it's allowed in the state of Colorado, the attorney can speak to that. But if technology can aid in that fashion, to simplify the process for a sheriff's office. So thank you for listening to me. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You have anybody next? No? Anybody else here to address the board this evening?
Yeah.
Yeah, can I really quick,
You betcha.
even though I'm not a resident of Lyons, can I still address the board?
Absolutely. Just give your name and address.
Okay, my name is Geraldine Patterson and my home address?
Yes.
Okay, 705 Clarendon Drive, Longmont, Colorado, and just want to let you know that the library is producing a documentary by, for, and about the town of Lyons. And we're just here tonight. We talked about this with Mayor Rogan to just get a little bit of footage of town hall, just to add to the documentary. So if you have any questions about that, let me know.
Thank you. And that's Courtney Becker.
Yes, oh yes, and this is Cordy Russell. He is the owner of R&R Media, videographer and photographer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, anyone else? All right, then let's start with Trustee Delman. Anything you'd like to respond to, Trustee Delman?
No.
Thank you. Trustee Browning?
No.
Thank you.
Nope.
I'd love to celebrate the library. I'm very excited about the 5th anniversary, and I'm really happy that Trustee Browning has accepted to present the history behind the library. I know that you're heavily involved, and I know the community greatly appreciates your efforts and those of your steering committee. So very excited about that. And also, I can't wait to see the documentary.
Oh yeah, November 2nd.
Okay, great.
Lions Middle Senior, 7 p.m.
Great, thank you. I too am super excited about the library celebration and the cake. I think if the library would like to ask Trustee Browning if he would like to dress as his favorite literary character. Might or might not entertain that.
Be careful what you ask.
Yeah, that might be dangerous.
But seriously, I think that's gonna be a great celebration and, the libraries in general are so dear to my heart. And this library in particular is such a wonderful community gathering space. And so it'll be great to celebrate all the effort that went into making it a reality. So thank you. Administrator Simonson?
No, not tonight, thank you.
No? Okay, then we will, close the audience business and let's move on to staff reports. Boulder County Sheriff's Office, please.
You can go to the podium.
Okay.
They'll give you some.
Name and address.
Yeah.
430 Fifth Avenue. So I apologize again, not getting you guys stats. I got them in late today. I'm on modified duty after a critical incident last Thursday in Broomfield, so I'll be in and out, but still point of contact still available. So I'll be in cities for the time being, hopefully not too long. So we had a great turnout at the community barbecue, for the 50th anniversary. It's more people I've ever seen after the last several years I've been there. So again, Mitch, everything got a band there and or solo guy. He was really good. Got a bunch of Coloradans showed up and brought our Bearcat up, so it was a pretty good turnout. Some complaints on Second Avenue between McConnell and the park, just with speeding and racing and stuff like that. So talking to some of the people who live in that area, and I did notice the lack of speed limit signs that we had kind of in that area on all the side streets. So working on getting Public Works involved to see if we can just get some more signage up. I know that's been part of their agenda since the speed limits changed a while back from 25, but so hopefully we can get some more signs up. That way it helps us, one, people see them, and because most people think, side streets are 25, because that's what's most common in most towns or cities. So, but one, it helps us enforce it when, well, you just drove right by a 20 sign. So, and then our flock cameras, so they moved one of them. So we have 4 out of the 6 up. They did all that last week, so trying to figure out how to organize all the stats so you guys can read it and understand all that, but hopefully the next few will get installed here in the next few weeks. Moving into stats or calls so far this year, we're at and this was through the 15th, but at just over 2,100, and that's up 152 from last year. So far in September, we've had 137 calls, and that's up 21 from last year. And that's mostly just, we had quite a few more traffic stops this year in town than last year. Tickets are at 511, and that's up 19 from last year. And then we've had 43 so far this month, and we had this time last year 16. Accidents, still at 38, and that's up 18 from last year. So we haven't had any since the last meeting. So hopefully it stays that way. For September 1st to the 15th, so far this year, just cars coming into town, almost 17 or 117,000, and that's up just over 17,000 from last year. So still a pretty good increase of cars coming into town. That is all I got.
All right. Questions for Sergeant Sears? Go ahead.
I have to say, so I live on Second Avenue, and I do think, but so it's certainly worse. The worst time is on the way to school for the high schoolers.
Right.
And I think some of them, with the way the bridge is, I think they try to get some air over the bridge. So then, one day last week, going the opposite direction, there was a car. The cars were going normal speed, and one car passed, going on the opposite direction and went through the stop sign, barely slowing down. It was really scary.
So we know it's a, problem. We've had a lot of, traffic and speed and stuff in town is a big thing. And even for me, that's one of my goals is to, enforce it as much as we can and be at the schools as well. We're short, right now, 2 school resource officers. So Mitch is like doing triple duty on trying to hit up all the schools. And, but yeah, I wish we had, could be out there 24/7 doing traffic, but I do know right, at Park and, Second, just, there's a 20 sign right there just for the bridge, but the only other one is, just, for traffic going towards McConnell that's, off by those townhomes, and it's partially covered up by a tree. But that's the only ones on that road, so, I went through some of the side roads, and I plan to do the rest of the town, but I know I think I counted like 20+ signs to put at after every intersection, just so people can see them and realize that, but, that's, I know, huge cost and time, effort as well, so. But yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question on behalf of the Housing and Human Services Commission. So first, I want to thank you for attending the emergency preparedness meeting. That was really helpful. I think that has motivated the commission to maybe think of some kind of fair in the spring. But you mentioned, there were some questions post wildfire. And I don't know if this can happen during evacuation, but you said at least for a 911 call, there's a way that vulnerable citizens who have special needs might be able to contact the Boulder County Communications either through you or I'm not sure through who to update their CAD notes or their caution notes. So that when 911 or I guess sends an ambulance or an emergency vehicle, they can be prepared for somebody with a disability living in that residence.
Right.
Can you tell me, do you happen to know offhand what is the best way to update those notes?
Yeah, so any address, we call it, I think they changed the name, but premise hazard. And that could be for anything, right? If you have a child with special needs, or you have someone that needs, oxygen 24/7, whatever that need extra, just that, extra need that might be is, you can either just call our dispatch and ask us to talk to a deputy and explain that, be like, hey, this is what's going on. Is there a way you can add a caution note or a premise hazard caution note, and they'll know what you're talking about. Or you can call, shoot me an email and I can work on it. It's literally just a form we have to fill out, and then that goes to our dispatch, and then they'll add that into our CAD system, which is computer aided dispatch. So any call there, whether it's a call for service or phone call or complaint, whatever it is, that caution note comes up automatically. And especially for like the fires, if it's somebody who needs help evacuating, they don't drive or they need oxygen, special circumstances like that is, when we're doing the evacuations, we won't know that, because we're not calling out every address we're going to, but in a situation like that, they can call 911 and say, hey, I live at this address and I'm gonna need an ambulance to get my mother out of here type thing. Cause she needs oxygen and whatever the case might be. So, that way we know and we can be like, oh, cool, that's the first resource we're going to, right? Type thing. And versus showing up and be like, oh, we need, these other resources to help this person get out.
So just to be clear, this wouldn't be helpful in times of evacuation, but it would be helpful when calling 911.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to contact you, when you said call the deputy, which number are you referring to?
They can just call the non-emergency number, the 303-441-4444. And that's gonna take you to like a phone tree. But if it's an emergency or you think it's like, I need a cop here now, or I need to talk to somebody right now, just call 911. You're not gonna get in trouble if it's for a valid reason, so.
But to update the CAD notes, it'd be the non-emergency number.
Yeah, and if you can work on, if you just give me a list of addresses, or they can shoot me an email, or that'd probably be the easiest, so that way we're not tying up deputies on the street, especially now that I have all this office time ahead of me, so. Then I can just work on it, literally I can just fill a form out, maybe contact them and give any other information, but it's super short, like, hey, person lives here that needs oxygen all the time. So if we're shutting off power, it's like, oh, that might be something to help us.
And so perhaps this is something that staff and the commission can work on to get the word out to people to know to register their homes for this.
Yeah, thank you.
You know,
I think that's an important service. that we need to-
I just wanted to mention, because you touched on something that I've been very concerned about since the most recent fire evacuation. I've been in contact with Lee, haven't been in contact with the county in terms of the county housing authority that manages 3 complexes in town, but it was very apparent during the Stone Canyon fire evacuation that there were a number of residents in town, elderly residents who did not drive, don't have cars, who if the evacuation zone had been moved further, and if we'd actually had a fire coming down the hill into town, they could not have gotten out of town. They did not have the means to do that, and couple of them are Meals on Wheels clients.
Right.
Leaf knows other people through the food pantry. The county, that manages 3 complexes should be in a position to know who in their complexes can drive, has access to a relative who can come get them there. There's a falling between the cracks problem here between the county, the county, Leaf, and people's friends and relatives. And it's something we need to solve, because what happened in that is a couple of the older people depended on elderly drivers who probably shouldn't even be driving on the road in normal traffic conditions to get them out of town. And we've got to do better than that.
Yeah, so
I'm glad that you mentioned.
We mentioned that in that, meeting we had last week is, and I heard there were some issues of like, cause when we have checkpoint, you know, this is like all hands on deck, and we have other agencies that they may be new and be like, hey, you're not letting anybody through here. Well, use your common sense, and it's somebody like, hey, this person can't drive, I'm delivering their meals. Like,
That was
get on the
another
radio
problem.
and ask, right? So, but if that doesn't work out, just call 911, be like, hey, I have this, and we have task force assigned just for missions, like, hey, this person needs evacuated, go get them, right? Like,
That's
and we
what,
have people waiting for those, types of calls. So if, you know, you have a family member, or even if it's like, I can't get a hold of them, I don't know, like, just call 911 and we'll get a call for service, and then that'll get assigned to the next task force that's ready.
there's some work being done to
Yeah.
try to come up with a list and somebody to check on the people on that list.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we can't say, all right, we're gonna, like we did, and that's why north of Broadway, you know, south of Steamboat, all that, the north part of town, that's why I triggered that evacuation so soon, because I knew there was a lot of elderly people, people that needed assistance leaving. That way we're not trying to do all that when, you know, flames are coming towards our house type thing. It's better to do it sooner than later.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we don't have, at least not yet, is like, all right, hey, these are the streets, like, this is the polygon we're gonna evacuate. You know, when we hit that, it doesn't just do automated, like all the addresses that need extra help getting out, unfortunately. But I know emergency management, they're awesome, and they're updating and changing things every day. So that's something that we can talk to them about, and I can actually talk to Chart about that, who runs all that, and see if there's something that we can do. That way they can just put that area in, and not only the phone trees for the, you know, reverse 911s or Everbridges is also things that pop up like, hey, this person needs an ambulance to get out, or, you know, doesn't drive, or things like that. If we can get those CAD notes in there, so
Yeah.
that'd be awesome if we could do that.
That would
So,
be
Thank you for that
Yeah.
work. So, first of all, I'm glad that you're safe. I
Thank you.
think we're all relieved about that. Any chance of maybe hauling the speed trailer up to Second?
So it's still out of commission, and with my free time now, I can actually get it to, because we just this summer went to trailer driving training. Like people that never driven a trailer, like they were like, there's too many accidents, people backing into things, so we had to go through this training, so a lot of guys didn't have that training. So that's why it's been sitting there, but I'll get it back there and have our garage look at it. It's just some electrical short thing, which it's above my expertise, so.
Okay,
But as soon as it's up and running, it'll be out there as much as possible.
all right, great, thank you so much. Okay.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay. Administrators report, please.
Thank you. I was also going to comment on the crisis mental health meeting that we had, but it sounds like we kind of touched upon that. And we were very, I think, all relieved to know that if we report a mental health crisis or a vulnerable adult or a person who might be experiencing homelessness and in need of services, that it's okay to call 911 to report that. And they will dispatch like the fire department to help us while we wait for co-responders and sheriff's office if needed to respond, because that can take 20 minutes to an hour sometimes. So Lions Fire Protection District is more than happy to come and help us with that situation until we get other professionals here. So if it's called through 911, they do not want us calling it into the station. So that was good to know. I did want to follow up from your last meeting. If you recall, we had quite a bit of audience business regarding Summit Housing Group and Highland Property. management company. And, the mayor and trustee Daddy and I met with the president of Summit and the local person who's supposed to be overseeing, the manager here for our site. And they were unavailable tonight, but they will be coming to your October 7th meeting to follow up on those issues that were noted and to address steps that they plan to take to both improve communication, the relationship, and at that site, and make sure people are feeling safe and secure in their homes. So they will be here October 7th. We have an issue that's arisen recently on Main Street that CDOT is following up on requiring leases now for using the space in front of the Main Street stores. And just want to let you know that staff is aware of that. And CML is also aware of it and addressing how it's being applied consistently throughout the state. So that it's not just our Lions folks that are receiving those notices. So I would expect more to come on that in the coming weeks. The sheriff's deputy did not mention, but we have had some graffiti, a little bit of increase last weekend, not this current one, but the one before, both at Bone Park and at the Visitor Center. So once again, another reason we need to get those cameras up. And it appears that one was not local folks, hopefully, and the other were some local teenagers, but that will be followed up on as well. And I really do need, we had some unfortunate grant news this last couple of weeks. And I do want some direction from the board when you are ready to do that. We were not awarded the CWCB grant for the construction of the restoration of the Carter Drive Streamway. At least not at this time. It may be eligible later, but they really want to see more partnerships involved with that. And because it doesn't really affect the water ways, neither of the watershed groups that are involved felt comfortable writing about the streamway. So that happened. And also Dr. Cog notified us that the Safe Streets for All grant that we were hoping to do our first phase of sidewalks with, we were a sub-grant applicant with Dr. Cog. They did not get that grant. So when we comes to our budget discussions in the next couple of months, we are going to have to talk about, is the town wanting to finance the sidewalks around the elementary school? Those were prioritized. Or there is one more opportunity there, and that's to apply for a Safe Routes to School grant, which did fund the first portion of that. So that is discussion we need to have. And then, and if so, that's where I need some direction. The grant is due November 1st. And if the board is interested in going to them for a portion of what we submitted for SS4A, we would need to know that so we can get that submitted. It does require a 20% match. So that is something we need some advice on. And then the brick application, which was for our stormwater. The federal government has delayed the award of those for now. I think they're waiting for November elections. No, I think that will be coming later, if it is awarded this year. Just want to inform the public that the Board of Trustees will be taking a property tour tomorrow that has been posted. And we're expecting it to be from approximately 3 to 5 at the latest, to go look at the properties that are being discussed in the Boulder County Intergovernmental Agreement. And also, as been noted during our workshop, we are hosting a town hall at the library on September 25th. All are welcome to attend. There'll be about a 15-minute update by the Board of Trustees, and then it will just be open for conversation and questions from the public. So all are welcome. And then I did include in my packet a request for funding from LEAF for 2025. I do not expect to discuss that tonight, but instead in our budget discussions. But if you have more questions or anything you'd like me to ask, I can certainly do that. And then, of course, last not least, I put in planning updates. I put the communications planning update as well. A few public works updates. So any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
Questions on the two grants that we were denied.
Yes,
So is there still a chance with the CWCB on the stream bank?
they had said that, that we were welcome to resubmit it if we could show more partnerships and more asset and value to the actual water than to the property.
So those are the partnerships and support that you're talking about, like the Desert Brand,
Yes.
okay. My question on that grant though is, so we've already gotten the grant.
For the
Design,
Mhm.
there's a penalty there, I think it's
Yes.
27,500.
Mhm. If we don't follow through with construction within a certain amount of time.
Right,
Yes,
so that's our penalty,
that is a risk we take, yes.
okay. On the sidewalk grant, is this the one we talked about earlier this year, the 4.5 or 4.2
It's a
million?
very large grant.
Okay. Then the other question I have is, I see the Carter Court opportunity,
Yeah.
which is of course tied in with the stream bank.
Mhm.
Those to me look like substandard lots at this point.
Well, at this point, they are,
So
yes.
it's suggested by the town engineer that they could be somehow remediated to get them up to snuff if we could put housing on that. Not quite sure how that would be done without getting into the stream bank restoration to some degree.
I can show you the engineering plans if the board wants to put this on the agenda to talk about. Or they were on the side.
No, I think we have to talk about it because it's not just as simple as dumping riprap over the bank.
No.
Just-
All right, we'll put it on a future agenda.
Okay. All right, that's all I have, thank you.
Anyone else?
Trustee All just covered my questions.
I have a couple of things. One is, and I believe you said that you were setting up a meeting with CDOT to talk about the process, the new process for determining speeds in town.
Yes,
And that's happening within the next couple of weeks.
yes,
Okay, I just want folks to know that.
yes.
And then the other
Under
thing,
under the new methodology, they're trying to,
yes,
we're going to ask for that, us to be a trial.
yes,
Yes,
for pedestrian safety.
yes.
For everybody's safety. And then the other thing that I didn't see in your report, because it's not, I mean, we didn't really have a hand in that, but I think it's important to mention, is that St. Vrain Left-Hand Water Conservancy District is working with Highland Ditch to launch a fish salvage pilot project to protect local fisheries. And so, I have the press release on that, and maybe at some point we can send that to the board, because I think there'd be an interest.
I think I did forward it to the entire board.
Did you? Okay, good.
Yeah, I did.
Great. Okay. That was it. All right. There's nothing else, then legal update, please, if there is one.
No legal update for me this one.
Great, great. We'll pay for that later when the legislature's back.
Yeah.
Okay. So, let's move on to ordinances and public hearings. Tonight, we have one first reading, ordinance 1173, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, implementing ballot question 1 concerning the increase of the town's lodging occupation tax to a maximum of 8%. Let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Mayor Rogan. So in 2022, the Board of Trustees referred to a ballot measure to change the lodging tax from a flat rate of $2 per occupancy to a 5% of the entire cost of occupancy, whatever that may be, initially with the ability to increase it to 8%. That ballot language is pretty clear that would go into effect January 1, 2023. But section 5 of that resolution said we're gonna do an implementing ordinance as part of what, if it does pass. And so the November election, it did indeed pass, through the voters of the town of Lyons. Ballot measures, including this one, are always self-implementing, so they go into effect when they're voted, when, they're approved and whenever they say they're effective. But there's kind of two different paths they can take. One path, and I confirm this with Dolores, is what, we usually do is we will send the ballot language to the codifier of the code, and they will change the code to reflect whatever that ballot measure was. I mean, this is typically done when specific ordinance language is suggested as part of the ballot question. Option 2, which is what this kind of track that this one went down, is that, it's too complicated really to capture in a ballot question about how to write that into the code. And so we have kind of, a final administrative step where we do an ordinance to reflect the intent of the ballot question. And so for whatever reason, in 2023, that second step of doing the implementing ordinance never happened. And so today, we are here on first reading to, implement this within the code, so everyone can read the code and see what the currently in effective law is. And so that's what we're doing. This is not changing the lodging tax. We're just really codifying within the code what was passed by the voters in 2022 and effective January 1, 2023.
So we are not changing the amount of the lodging tax from 5%.
Not at all, no.
So everybody is super clear
Yeah,
about that.
if the board were to want to change the ballot, and I'm not saying we're doing that, it would take a separate resolution, the Board of Trustees, stating very clearly we are moving from 5 to 6 or 7 or whatever that number may be.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Attorney Dittman? My understanding is that staff is also taking a look to make sure there are no past ballot measures
That's
that
correct.
also require implementing ordinances. So,
Yeah, at least in my initial conversation with Dolores on this, and she says she's always sending them to the codifier, because they kind of fall into that track 1, where they're so simple, where we propose specific language and the codifier takes care of it.
okay. All right. Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion. Kimberly?
Yep, I motion to approve ordinance 1173, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, implementing ballot question 1, concerning the increase of the town's lodging occupation tax to 8% upon first reading,
A maximum of
The
8%.
maximum.
Maximum.
to a maximum of 8%.
Thank you. Is there a second
Second.
discussion? None. Okay. All right, and I will call the vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Fantastic, thank you, everybody. Administrator Simonson, will you read consent, please?
Thank you. Yeah. I'm gonna read consent tonight because Maria's voice is almost gone. Item number 1, resolution 2024-83, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, awarding construction. Oh, mine cut off there. Should do the first one.
Yeah, resolution 2024-83, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, awarding construction agreement to Vance Brothers Incorporated for 2024 pavement treatments, project 24 pavement 01.
Resolution 2024-84, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, accepting the public improvements at 4196 Youth Highway, also known as Spirit Home Distillers. Resolution 2024-85, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, supporting the St. Vrain Valley School District 2024 bond measure. The September 3rd, 2024 regular Board of Trustees meeting minutes and the September accounts payable.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve consent? Is
So moved.
there a second?
I'll second.
Anything anybody would like to remove tonight?
I have one question about one of the payables, so we could remove those.
Remove
I'll ask that
tables?
question.
You betcha. Anyone else? Okay, let's vote on consent as amended.
Motion passes unanimously.
Trustee Browning?
And the question on the payables is a payable of $17,680 to JVA Incorporated. Is that for the wastewater treatment plant study? And where do we stand on them on that contract? What percentages have they received or have
They
left
have a
to go?
remaining balance of 4,000. This was an invoice that was from a couple of months ago that didn't get paid as it should have. Something got overlooked in the accounts payable or it got miscoded. So we brought it back up,
Okay,
but they have 4,000 left.
4,000
Yeah,
out of,
56
and was that a grant or was that from the town?
pounds.
So they only got 4,000 left?
Yeah.
Right, just for the record, Trustee Lowe, on our meeting along with some town staff of JVA tomorrow, and I have some questions about what they did. Guess payment and that sort of thing. I guess it'll be still $4,000 at issue. So, I'll go ahead and move the approval of the payables, but I just wanted to note on the record that there are some questions of JVA in terms of what was done on that study.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
You, any discussion?
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Boards and commissions, tonight I am pleased to appoint Caleb Piper to the Student Advisory Commission and Regan Friedman to the Student Advisory Commission. Trustee Delman and I have been chit-chatting about getting that going again, so hopefully staff can let these folks know they've been appointed, and it'll be great to get the students back on board.
Yeah, we'll need to get 4 for a quorum.
We'll need to get 4 for a quorum. Can the commission still meet without a quorum?
They could, but I think it will be redundant to train them.
Okay,
You know what I'm saying?
okay. And I know you were speaking to the principal about recruiting.
Yeah.
Right, so, okay, well, it's positive momentum. We'll take it. Yeah, thank you. So let's move on to general business. Item 1 is discussion direction on approving cash in lieu of 4 CPT units for property located in Lions Valley Park, filing 8. Who is going to take the staff on this?
That would be me.
Okay,
I'm shocked. It's a little early. It's not even 8 o'clock and I'm speaking on something. Don't jinx it. I know.
don't change that.
So I think there are 2 items really in question here that would come up. The first one would be in general, whether we want to accept cash in lieu of water rights. The second then being how much if you decide you wanted to accept cash. In my cover memo, I tried to put in the background information that talks more about the legal aspect of the water rights and why staff and the utility and engineering board feel that we can accept cash in lieu of water rights at this time, and potentially there why we should accept cash in lieu. So before we moved on to the second question, which was the value of that cash in place of water rights, I wanted to see if there were any questions on just the idea or the background of accepting cash instead of water rights. If on the background information, I would say.
I think this board is familiar with the concept. Does anybody have any questions about the background on accepting cash in lieu in general?
So on to the second question really becomes then, how much do we accept in lieu, in this case, for a Colorado Big Thompson water share versus a Lake McIntosh water
Well,
share?
let's hang on 1 second because we didn't have any questions. I just wanted to be clear about direction from the board on the first question before we move on. So are we in agreement that we're willing to consider accepting cash in lieu for these shares?
Sure, it's been done before and under the right circumstances, we clearly have the authority to do it again.
Okay,
But the second question.
okay. I just wanted to be super clear on that, so thank you.
Sure. So the second question, was the value, and that has come up with a request or a proposal that was brought to staff by, applicants or the town resident and the partner. That's the proper terminology. Sorry about that. So some of you may know who were on the previous board. They did come before and came up to discuss that. A year ago, when that was done, the value at that time, we were talking about the $70,000 based on staff too. That was the only information I had really had. We hadn't seen a whole lot of movement recently last year when that came forward. There was a chart, if you saw, the college just got up today, that showed up until 2023, which was how recently Northern Water was able to update that record. I did speak to Northern Water today on a number of items. And so that chart you might have seen showed that $70,000 value. Since that time, I went to the auction in Longmont. Right, that was there. That was a rare auction that they had held. I did again talk to Northern. Northern Water does not hold auctions. Northern does not own any shares, just so we're clear on CVT. They don't hold auctions to help others buy and sell those shares. They try to really keep that separate for those who are allottees, as they would call them, or shareholders. So in speaking to them, I wanted to be able to find out, exactly where things stood with some of these auctions. So I was told that they were aware of, the person I spoke to, she had heard of 4 auctions in the last 15 years, 2 of them being this year. I was also then on one of the board meetings for Northern Water in their discussions. And one of the items they were discussing was emphasizing their preparations for more of these auctions, because they expect there could be more. I think a lot of the discussion on it was during auctions, the way the prices come up. So at the auction, again, I wanted to begin with presenting an offer that was made by the applicant. I wasn't sure in the negotiations if it was proper to come and say, okay, some of the shares there actually sold the lowest at 42,000. The highest share was 72,000. The first share that went at that auction went for 72,000. The lowest share went at 42,000, with a number of them in the 40s. But again, I bring this up because there's been a lot more discussion on it this last weekend, with the board wanting more information than just having the applicant submit their proposal. There was a second auction, and you may have seen on that where the average price looked to be 57,000. I don't have the specifics on that, how much was above that, how much was below that. But again, that's the average with it up and down. So we come here now, I brought this forward because I feel we have a couple of applicants who then presented that they had purchased 4 shares for the 4 of the lots that they own. They now have 4 remaining lots that they were willing to offer the town cash in lieu of those shares. I did not have the actual agreement at the time. It was presented. I'll leave, if you want to come up during your presentation and make that, that's fine. Just knowing some of if there was a possible non-disclosure that I heard mentioned, but seeing that value that they've paid for shares, that in all opportunity, they could possibly go back and buy those shares. So we bring that forward with, again, we have $200,000 or $50,000 per share. I did want to also mention the idea that we talked about possibly selling shares. I want to make sure it's understood. At this point, we're not selling shares. Our portfolio remains exactly what it is. We don't lose the water rights. We're actually accepting water on top of what we already have in water rights. So we're just accepting this cash. If we sell a share, we get rid of that water right. Now, it is likely that somebody will then bring a new water right when they develop, but we don't know that. Things happen, you know, we could sell 4 shares of water and then maybe nobody comes and actually gives us 4 shares back. Now we don't have cash and we're down 4 shares of water that we had. So just to try to clarify, this is not actually the sale of shares. We are just getting cash and keeping our exact portfolio that we have. And I think the water rights aspect is somewhat complicated. I've been working a lot with Northern Water on that and have a pretty good understanding now with how things work with that. So again, you can't just sell them. The auctions don't happen. There are a number of other aspects with our agreement with Longmont that have nothing to do with our water rights. What Longmont says they want to see from us, again, has nothing to do with what water we actually use. A lot of times we're using half the amount of water we dedicate to Longmont. We are using none of our Lake McIntosh water that goes to Longmont. So the dedication to Longmont becomes completely independent. We're looking at our water rights portfolio that we have. And then we have the opportunity for the additional $200,000. Hearing the UEB feel that they had valued getting cash in lieu for the projects that could be done was one of the main reasons that we decided, yes, the UEB, I thought I had heard from some of the trustees and staff that it was worthwhile to hear this proposal that to me should be at least listened to as a valid proposal that somebody's out who may be offering to give us as much, if not more, than they might pay to just bring us water rights, which we said we don't necessarily need more water rights. I think that was most of what I had. I tried to keep it simple in the beginning, but again, trying to balance how much information is desired versus how much information should just be held when we're talking about a discussion on what could be negotiation, what is an applicant's submission, or trying to balance that out.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for Director Kaplan at this time?
Yes. Northern Water lists on their website certain blocks of shares for sale. 10 here, 1 here, 2 there, 4 there, whatever. They don't list the prices, they just list shares that are for sale. Do they track those prices when they're actually sold?
Northern Water has that listed. Because I haven't seen the share. They said they stayed out of it. They had said they don't offer any private numbers. If there is something public, that's what they use for that chart. But any private sales are private between allottees. They do have to get permission from Northern Water to both purchase or to sell their shares.
What would be a public sale? Like, what do they mean by that? Because I mean, like, I've got a list that I'm gonna pass out here, like, in 2022 and 2023, Berthoud bought 50 water shares and paid $65,000 a share. Lafayette bought 184 shares and paid $68,000 a share. You know, and they're in the newspapers and they were noticed at their city council meetings and that kind of stuff. Would that be considered like a public sale or is that?
I could see potentially anything that dealt with the municipal or government could be considered, but I don't know that for sure.
And what, in a private sale would be, what would the auctions themselves be considered? Is that considered a private sale or a public sale?
The auctions, I would say, would have been public because we know that, again, I was able to go there, so it was open to the public.
Right, but I mean, in terms of Northern Colorado Water, what they use in compiling their historic chart that we added to the package that shows prices going up over time to near 70,000.
I have to research that.
Okay. Now, you went to that auction, and I guess I could ask this of the applicants as well. In addition to the share price that any successful bidder paid, don't they also pay a 10% buyer's premium, auctioneer's fee essentially?
I know there's a fee paid to Northern Water to transfer the shares.
I'm talking about a buyer's commission essentially. a buyer's premium of 10% at those auctions, so that if you bought a share at an auction for $50,000, your actual cost would be $55,000.
I'm not aware of that.
Some of the newspaper articles about that reflected that, Commissioner. And when the
Yeah,
hours up, I can ask them that question as well. Has the town staff done any exploration or discussion with water brokers about whether it would be most advantageous to the town in terms of getting the maximum price for its surplus shares if we decided to sell some of those shares? And from your memo, roughly 8 to 10 shares probably surplus over what we need to retain for the 4 lots, plus perhaps some unknown commitments. Would we be better off selling those 1 share here, 3 shares here, 4 shares there, 2 shares there, or selling them in a block of 10 if that's the number we come up with?
I haven't looked into that. We would have to see, right, what's the time involved, how much staff time, what does it take for their commissions? I'm sure there's a number of questions that might go into trying to decide what it would take to sell that asset.
That may be a good topic for an upcoming workshop if we decide to go there.
Yeah, I've got, that's the reason I ask it here is to compare. This would be selling a part of our surplus shares, or not selling, encumbering essentially, and that's my next question. You're right, technically we wouldn't be selling these shares, but if we accept cash in lieu of those shares, and we know that there are potentially 4 lots within existing town limits that may come in to take advantage of those shares, don't we really have to add those 4 shares to the shares that we keep on hand in case those properties get developed someday, just like we're reserving shares for the 4 lots we know about that haven't been developed yet?
Right, I would think those would basically become pre-existing commitments.
So we're basically encumbering those shares, even though we're not selling them, to dispose of them. Otherwise, we'd have to go back out and buy shares to replace them. We were short.
That is each year what we have to dedicate to Longmont. We could always look at, as we've talked about before, should we really need to dedicate everything that we do? Could we look at renegotiating that contract?
Yeah.
Again, we encumber the Lake McIntosh water that we dedicate to them. That's not even potable water. It can't be used by them. So there's a lot of differentiation between how we work our contract with Longmont and how much water we actually need to use.
And to be clear about the UEB has not passed on whether 46,000 or 50,000 or 52,000 for this particular offer is a fair price for our shares, have they?
Correct. No.
That's all my question. I just have a question for the town attorney. I've got some information about recent water share sales that I've researched that I'd like to pass out because we can't circulate it by email in advance of a meeting.
Yeah, feel free to pass it out.
Should I do that now or wait until we get to comments?
Yeah, keep that.
Anyone else have any questions for staff? You?
Water.
No. Does anybody have this electronically so it can be shared on screen and here on the screen?
Email it to me. I can look it up.
Okay,
Sorry.
where's the scene? Just so folks online know what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
looks like it.
Perfect. Okay. While we're getting that done, would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Yeah.
Come on up and please just state your name and your address, just so we have it on record.
Dave Rickman, 812, Montague Drive.
Keith Chatfield, I'm at 2002 Blue Yonder Lane in Fort Collins.
So just what I handed Aaron, I promised him earlier, that was a settlement statement from our purchase of the 4 lots in May of this year. So he'd asked me if we could give him some confirmation of what we actually paid. And so that's what I submitted to Aaron this evening.
And we're okay submitting it
Yeah,
to
that's
the
very
board. So you want me to make copies?
You could just tell us.
200,000 to $200. So $200,000 for the sale price, closing fee $200.
Thank you.
So I can give you, I don't know if
We're, excuse me, I don't understand, is that from, you said lots, you mean the shares?
You mean the shares?
Or shares.
Or shares.
Shares, okay.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying.
So November of 22, we came in front of the board and made a presentation for cash in lieu. Keith went and surveyed all the neighboring communities, and most of them have a cash in lieu program. We presented that information to the trustees. We got a really hard no and kind of walked out shaking our heads thinking, but we tried to give the town a bunch of money they didn't want. So we went out and bought the shares in the open market. We're getting ready to buy 4 more shares in the open market. I see Aaron from time to time because I'm involved in some projects here in town. I said, Aaron, I'm getting ready to buy 4 more shares. I mean, does the town want the money? And this is a heck of an opportunity for the town. I'm not getting it. He said, let me see what I can do. And he started having discussions and said, I think there's a little momentum. Why don't you guys come in front of trustees and make one last effort to say, hey, we'd rather give the town the money. I live here. I love the town. Been here 26 years. I live on Second Street, North Second Street, probably the worst street in town. All the kids have to walk down the center of the street. The right of way is encumbered by cars, trucks, traffic, driveways, you name it. Town can use the money. It's a small town, but we'd love to do something with the town, but if not, we're just gonna go and buy the shares from.
Yeah, we're not into having a contentious thing or anything like that. It's like, we've got another deal going to buy 4 more shares, and we like the town, you know, I used to live here myself and I'd love to get back. That's one of the reasons I bought one of the lots out there, but, you know, what ends up happening is just like at the last, we're thinking, well, do we now give more money to the person that has the big T shares, or should we just offer it to the town? If they want the cash, we'd rather have the cash land here, you know? So that's really as simple as that.
What's happened is, you know, CBT was going up and up and up. Development was going crazy here in Colorado. And I think just the increases in CBT, people were saying, oh my gosh, it's going to go to 90 or 100. Then interest rate came up. Real estate development, I've been doing this 35 years. There's no financing for horizontal development. If you want to go to put streets and roads and all that in, you're raising capital. So all that has kind of come to us, not a screeching halt, it's slowed way down. So now between Chimney Hollow opening up, which is the size of Carter Lake, that's coming up, and there's 3 more reservoirs coming out back east. There's a lot of water right now. And you can call Sherry. I've known Sherry forever, and that's how we found this person. I said, Sherry, who's got 5 shares, 10 shares, and she'll give you 4 or 5 names. And you call those people and say, this is what I'm willing to pay. And he said, great. This person we're dealing with, he wants to spread out his tax liability. So he's saying, I'll do 4 this year, and then we can spread it out over the next couple of years. And I'm like, okay, it's like, we may do that, but I want to go to town again first. So that's why we're here. I don't know what else we can share with you. You know, it's supply and demand. It's what someone's willing to take right now. And we went to both options and saw what's happening there. The municipalities, you know, what they buy is, I guess, is public, but what the onesie twosies, kind of the market we're in is a different market. So what questions do you have that we could help you with?
Thank you for coming in person, appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I know Trustee Browning has some questions, I want to see if anybody else does first.
Yeah, so I'd just like to clarify, so you said for the last 4 shares, it was 200,000, and what are they accepting for the next 4 then? These
Oh,
projects we're doing?
we've signed an NDA, and that's why we
Oh.
blacked out the person's name. So we're not gonna disclose that. We promised we wouldn't.
Fair enough.
So, but the market's, it's soft. You call Sherry, and God bless her, she's a wonderful person up in Northern Water, but if you call and ask her, she's there to protect the shareholders of the CPT system. So you say, Sherry, what's water going for? She goes, oh, you know, Dave, maybe 60, 65, but Sherry, you know, I just know these went for 45. She goes, yeah, you know, some of those are going for 45 and then, okay.
Really, yeah, it really is, you know, you call a bunch of people in there, you're gonna get a lot of people say, I want 70. But you keep digging, and that's what we do, we just keep digging, and we find somebody who wants their money and they wanna get out, they don't do farming anymore, and, you know, that's what we do.
And that's the sad part, because you're getting these dust fields now where people inherited their families' farms. They don't want to farm anymore. They're selling their water off. So now you can no longer have water on a farm. It just sits there. Guys like us are buying it and dedicating it to the town. So
Anyone else? Trustee Brennan?
It's the auction that you bought your 4 shares at was the first one in February. There were 2 in February.
we didn't go, yeah.
Oh, you bought yours outside of the auction. Are you familiar with those auctions that took place in February?
We went to them.
And the first one, according to published reports in multiple places, the average share price, and agreed, as Aaron said, they were between the 40s and the 70s. The average share price was $52,481. But isn't it true that people at those auctions pay a 10% buyer's premium? So the actual cost for those shares would be around $57,000.
I think I don't know what the auction house gets paid for doing the auction. Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly what you're probably close to what they were getting.
Several newspaper articles said there was a 10% buyer's premium.
Yeah, there was some commission they were paying the auction house, yeah. You go to a broker, they're gonna take a commission too. What isn't clear about that, I read that report, is is that a calculation based on the auction price, and is the auction price including the commission or not? I mean, so when they strike the deal at, let's say 52,000, is the proceeds coming back to the seller gonna be 47 or something like that? So it wasn't clear to me where that commission really came out. So it may be that it's actually 47, not 57, so.
I think what those auctions did is kind of reset the market, at least for a period of time. And I don't know. I've heard the Chimney Hollow, again, the reservoir right above Carter Lake, and they're within less than 100 feet of having that complete. That's as large as Carter Lake. That's a game changer.
But Northern Water is not gonna issue more water shares because of that additional reservoir, are they?
But they'll store more water,
I'm sorry? Yeah, they're not gonna issue more shares.
but there'll be more availability.
And if they have more water to supply, isn't it possible that they might set the annual quota a little bit higher than 70%, which has been the standard in recent years, and those shares might be worth more?
It could be, you know, I don't think this needs to be very complicated. So, we have an opportunity to go buy water, basically what we paid for it before. I'd rather give it to the town. Hopefully we can do something with the town. Yeah, I live here, I'd rather see the money go to town. I'm disappointed the money didn't go to town last time. I own 6 properties here in town. I pay a lot of property tax. And you think,
What was the amount you're offering last time?
We didn't really get to it.
yeah, so what we had, you know, and
You were suggesting the average of Longmont and Berthoud or something like that.
Longmont, Berthoud, Fort Collins, Loveland, you know, Keith did all this late work, and it was 30-something thousand.
Yeah,
or
it
something.
was somebody,
Which seemed fair to us, because that's what all these other towns are doing. They're realizing that the CBT is just stifling growth.
well, dedicating CBT for annexation is really not happening anymore. It's towns buying up or ditch companies buying up the shares and then offering the cash in lieu as the option to the development. So, you know, what we're offering, you know, is this, we can share this basically from before, but it shows based on in March, what neighboring towns are all collecting for cash in lieu. And what we're offering is roughly twice as much as what Longmont is getting per home. So one of the things that the towns are also doing is looking at how much water dedication is required. So, you know, Longmont does it based on a land area calculation. And, you know, they calculate a half acre per house, it's not a full CBT share, so.
So I think I don't think, but I'm pretty sure the SIA agreement for filing aid on for Lions Valley Park is in conflict with what your municipal code says as far as how much water you should be taking per single family home.
What's in conflict with the code?
Having one share of water for one house is too much water,
Oh, yes, we know that.
but you're still doing it.
For many years, because the overage protects the town if the allotments ever cut, because the overage protects the town if the allotments ever cut.
But
Well,
I
and
think
because
there's,
of our-
your municipal
our
code
agreement
says
on-
that you.
Yeah, because of our.
I don't see a conflict.
Well,
That's your
and
opinion.
Lions is not Longmont. You know,
I'm referring to your municipal code, but anyway,
It's probably off,
let's.
let's stick to the issue at hand. Let's stick to the issue at hand, which is you are offering us cash in lieu of $200,000 for 4 shares. Is there, and this is a discussion direction to staff.
Yes.
So the discussion direction could be, for example, staff should go back and see if we can negotiate a different price. And if so, what would we like that price to be? The discussion direction can be, no, we're not interested. The discussion direction can be, yes, we are interested.
And to draft a resolution,
Yeah.
bring next.
Exactly. So, does anyone have a suggestion?
My suggestion is that we direct staff to consult with experienced, reputable water brokers and other municipalities for that matter, if they're willing to share information to try to determine the best way to dispose of the town's surplus water shares, whatever number that may be determined to be, which we have not determined yet as a board. How to maximize the return for our surplus water shares, whether it's 5, 8, 10, 12, whatever it may be, to see what we could get if we hired a water broker who understand charge a standard 6% commission. What would we net from selling, say, 10 shares? With it, so that's my suggestion on direction.
So help me understand how that relates to the offer that's on the table.
Because if we can get $65,000 a share for 10 shares, why should we accept an offer of $50,000 for 10 shares? Because that would cost the ratepayers of Lions $60,000 for the 4 shares. And as I said earlier, it's one of the questions I asked Director Kaplan. It may be that selling our shares piecemeal, 1 here, 2 there, 4 there, 3 there, which is what we would be going down the road to doing if we accept an offer for 4 of an unknown number of surplus shares. Maybe we maximize our return that way. I don't know. Maybe if we sell 10 shares at the block, maybe we maximize our return that way. That you can get more sort of premium for volume or something like that. But I don't think that we have enough information to determine what the current market value of our shares, our surplus shares is. And I don't think market value should be determined based on what one particular buyer paid at an auction, or paid in a private transaction some months ago, when if you include the buyer's premium in multiple articles, and I've got copies of them if anybody wants to see them, reflected there indeed are 10% buyer's premiums changed at collected at these things. So the value to the buyers at an auction where the average price is $57,000, which was the figure it's reported everywhere for the most recent auction, they're actually going to pay $62,719 a share. That's what I figured out. On the prior auction, they actually looked at the value to the buyers, $57,729 a share. And if there are buyers out there, and those auctions were within the last, it's February, 6 months ago. There's a water broker now, you can see it on the website, that has the listed asking price for shares, and maybe they'll get that, maybe they want it $65,000.
Okay.
So with that information out there, I don't see how we could justify, under our fiduciary duty to the ratepayers of Lions, taking $50,000 a share. Town of Lyons has accumulated its water share inventory beginning at 1941. This has been going on for 80 years. The decision at this point to start either selling or accepting cash in lieu for surplus shares is a big change in what the town boards that are predecessors to us have done for decades. This may be the time to make that change because now we're nearing a point where we can fairly confidently, with a little bit of uncertainty, determine how many shares we need when we reach build out of current town limits of the pre-committed shares. Maybe now is the time to make that change. But if we're gonna do that, we need to, number one, let the public know because it may be controversial. There are some people who are not gonna like us selling water shares for the very reason that they've been the best investment this town has ever made. If you look at that chart that was in the packet of what the value has done, buying and holding those shares has been a great investment from 80 years for the town of Lyons. If we're now gonna sell, because we think we're nearing the top of the market, we better make sure we get full market price, that we get the maximum return. And to figure out what market price is, you need to consult with people who understand the market. Brokers, Northern Colorado Water, other towns. We need that information. We don't have it.
Okay, let's bring this into landing.
So my direction to the town and I also think we need more UEB input. We need UEB input, not just on the general concept of should we accept cash in lieu. I think we all agree under some certain circumstances, we have done that and can do that. But I think we need UEB input on what's a fair price for our town shares in this market. And there are sources of information out there, water brokers, other municipalities, to find out what is the true market value of this. To base a market value on one sale in the past is not a good way to determine market value. So that's my suggestion. Let's determine what the market value is from the available sources, and let's make a decision on how many surplus shares we think we have and we're willing to either sell or take cash in lieu off.
I think it requires Northern Water's input on what's legally allowable. When Dolores and I were at the meeting, they were a little shocked. The municipality was trying to sell water and will have to go through all the legal regulations to actually sell water rights.
Okay.
So we'll have to work through that also.
All right, and that's, so to reel us back in a little bit about the issue on the table, what is your timing for a decision?
Well, time is of the essence, as they say. We're in the process of sealing a deal right now. So the longer it delays, the more we're at risk. So we really have a fairly short window here.
What do you mean by fairly short?
I would say a couple of weeks.
A couple weeks.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the board would need to give some pretty specific direction tonight if you only have a couple weeks.
Yep.
Okay,
But I think there is
should have asked
some
that before.
question, and maybe Attorney Gittman could answer, but as far as your charter and whether or not you can profit from water, I don't think you can do that.
We don't have a charter, we're not home rule.
Okay, well.
There's a general principle in our, we're not allowed to speculate on water. What that actually means, I'm not the town's water attorney. You know, you probably want to consult the town's water attorney for information on that.
So given the timing of, we need to make a decision tonight whether we're willing to accept the $200,000. That changes the course of action here. What, is there a staff recommendation?
I just have one more, thought on this. Is there an amount you would accept cash in lieu based on the data you've already received? So that you know what the range is. In case the applicant would consider that.
The most recent listing I've seen is a $65,000 listing. I'm not even comfortable accepting that because I don't know what the market value is.
Okay, well, that's one person, so yeah, so 65 might be an option for the applicant to consider if they don't want to wait for the market study.
I'm looking for an answer for your question.
Yes.
Is there a recommendation from staff on it?
Yes, I feel we're not selling shares. I feel we have a water right portfolio. Staff, if it's me and staff feels that we are accepting cash in lieu of water rights. We've accepted cash in lieu of Lake McIntosh. I don't see the difference. They're both water rights that we use to get water. So we have already done that at least a couple of times. So my recommendation is that we accept this to assist and put it, if we wanted to capital improvements. If there was a need for the UED, you could look at the UED. I would think I and Trustee Browning would not need to give our input to the UED. We could let them reflect on it themselves.
When's their next meeting?
Wednesday.
Let's get the information to them. And get their opinion on it. Attorney Dickman, so were you saying that we can't sell water shares on the open market?
I'm not saying that, I said we can't speculate on water, you can't buy water shares to resell them.
Okay.
But in terms of exact parameters of that, I'm not a water attorney. You need to speak to the town's water attorney.
I'm generally in favor of accepting the cash in the water shares. I think it would be a great boon for our infrastructure. The rub then is obviously what the price is. You said 65, they're saying 50.
Would be average.
Yeah, I've got that. Yeah. Let's toss it to the UEB, get a recommendation from them, and get back to, Mr. Wickham and Chatfield.
I think the issue with that is the board will not meet. The board should, at least, yeah, we don't meet for 3 weeks, so we should at least come up. If we would like to do that, we should come up with a range to give staff that we would be comfortable with.
All right, I'll propose a top end of 240.
Trustee Delman, what are your thoughts?
I say yes, that we should do it, but closer to the average listing price, so I'd be happy with 240 as well.
The average listing price is at 63,690, that's 254,760.
Right, but I'm 240, I'd be
You're just,
fine with that.
60 a share.
Yeah,
I would be comfortable at 225.
Trustee Datty.
I appreciate you coming to the board of trustees and wanting to help the town of Lyons. And I appreciate that the water fund could use the extra cash influx here. But I don't pretend to be a water expert and I have a really hard time trying to determine what these rights are worth. And we have an applicant giving us an amount they have paid in the past. We don't know what the amount they're negotiating right now. And we have some amounts that are, above that amount that Trustee Brown has found. So I'm kind of at a loss to make a decision as to, I think I would trust UEB's recommendation for sure. I'm comfortable with the range, but it's really hard to make this decision without knowing exactly what they're worth.
Well, that's the thing is you don't know what they're worth until you go to buy them.
So I guess I'm with everybody else on this range.
Look, let me add with it, not about this particular offer, but in the past, when we've taken cash in lieu of Lake McIntosh shares, where did the information come from as to what they were worth? They came basically from the water brokers. Lee Williams, new brokers, he had been involved in the market. That's the kind of information I'm suggesting getting about CBT shares. That's how those prices were done. It wasn't what one person had paid 6 months ago for some like McIntosh shares. It was what information could be gathered from the market from people who have experience in dealing in those shares, what they're worth. And that's what I'm suggesting we do here.
Yeah, and I guess my question is, will the UEB have all that information on Wednesday to be able to make a recommendation?
They'll probably have the same information unless they want to do some research on their own. Or unless one of them knows a water broker and wants to invite him to the UEB meeting.
So are we able to direct staff to look into this over the next couple of weeks? Would we be able to come with an answer from a water broker in the next couple of weeks?
Yes, staff.
most likely. we could get some more information above and beyond this. I don't know, to get them in the smaller increments of shares. I mean, they definitely are different values if it's blocks versus small shares. So if you can find someone who's recently sold or purchased 4 shares, we can get some more data. What I'm hearing the board say is there is an interest in taking cash in lieu. And right now, it sounds like it's between 50,000 a share and 60-ish per share, possibly. Would it be acceptable to both parties if we do some more research? In the meantime, take it to UEB and possibly draft a resolution to bring back to you at your next meeting, where you fill in that blank for the amount at that meeting, once we know some more information.
That's acceptable to me.
Acceptable to me, I'm not sure it is to the applicant.
May not be,
Yeah.
you know, you all,
Our next meeting isn't until October 7th.
you all need to make your decision. We
I think
understand.
this is actually, personally, I think it's been good for the town. I mean, the town has an opportunity on water dedication, cash in lieu. There's probably a ton of research more to do. That's good. Town having a cash in lieu policy refined would probably be good. But we're gonna continue on with, our opportunity to obtain these shares. And we just thought, before we did that, we'd rather write the check to Lions than write the check to some private farmer that just wants to get out. And there are a few of those out there,
And we understand that, we appreciate that, and you understand that we are responsible to our ratepayers to get the best deal we can for them.
And there's a comment about water brokers and they provide a service, but I would not buy water from a water broker. I mean, water brokers' interest is as much money as they can because they're making a fee on that, just like any broker. So you ask a broker what a price is, what are they gonna tell you? The highest price they think they can possibly get a share for. So is that reflective of the market? No.
Okay, well, so it sounds like you have your direction, sounds like we're all.
What's the direction for the UED? They're going to look at these numbers and make the same decision-making that you all.
We wanna know.
None of them have any more information than you.
We wanna know from the UAB what they feel is a good share price,
And yeah, based on what they have. at the
based on
time.
the information that they have.
Same.
Understanding that, if you all, move forward, we would just ask that you let staff know that you purchased the shares so that we don't have any wheels spinning
So
unnecessarily.
what would there be any communication in the next week or week and a half or 2 weeks? where you
Well, I
can
think
say,
after the UAB meeting.
After Wednesday, we'll have the commission's recommendation.
Yeah. It's, I mean, to overstate this, it makes me sick if the guy that we bought water from, we're not going to buy water from again, he loves me. But he's a farmer, his parents were farmers, he sold his farm, he knows in New Mexico, wherever the heck he is, and I want the money to stay here.
Well, we appreciate that, and you understand that we have to make the best deal we possibly can for our ratepayers. So, we all have the same interest at heart, which is the town of Lyons and what's best for the town of Lyons. And so, we'll move forward and hope we can make a deal. And if we can't this time, then,
Sure. Can I ask a clarifying question on just to confirm the assumptions behind the transaction? Let's assume we go ahead with it. Are you expecting that payment immediately or sometime in the future?
That's a great question. I would ask, Victoria.
When would they need to dedicate it, now or at the time of a building permit?
It's up to a decision with the dedication.
Yes.
Normally has to come when you have a building permit.
It's already plotted lot, so it should be at the time of building permit.
We're not gonna declare anything up front. The dedication of the money could be whenever it was decided upon an agreement.
Well, let's stay positive. I'd love to work somehow with the town and let's see what happens Wednesday.
Okay.
Again, and keep an eye on what we're together. We bought 8 lots from from Keith, well, God rest his soul, he was a nice man. But we bought those collectively through a company that we own. We did quick claim those to each to our respective companies. I mean, we're in this to make a decision collectively, but I can't commit Keith to anything. He can't commit me to anything.
Got it.
So just to be clear on that.
Well, appreciate
Yeah.
your time. Thanks for coming in person, gentlemen, and glad that we got you in before 11 o'clock at night.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night.
You too.
Look, before you, one statement on the record, just so clear on doing, I'm trying to email that the town email system will let me, a link to the Northern Colorado parent. I'm trying to email to you and Victoria, and I'll copy the mayor, and if anybody else wants it separately, I'll do it. A link to the Northern Colorado website that lists shares available for sale right now. They do maintain a list. And what they do with the resulting prices off the list that they maintain on their own website, I don't know. But if you have a contact there, she or he may be able to tell us.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Let's move right along to discussion direction on Prop 123 affordable attainable housing goals. Andrew, yes, this is you.
That's me, Andrew Bone, planning staff. Let me share my screen real quick. If I can. All right, so, as requested, I took this in front of the PCDC. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
So for a little background, as part of our Prop 123 commitment, DOLA has put out 17 qualifying strategies that municipalities and counties, anybody within the Prop 123 commitment cycle, for those agencies to adopt to try to gain more development for affordable and attainable housing. The only one that is required during this grant cycle is the expedited or fast tracking review for workforce housing projects where 50%, at least 50% is dedicated towards a split of attainable or affordable units. So that one we have to do if we want to stay within our commitment period and be committed for the next cycle as well. But as was requested by the DOT a few months ago, I took these lists of strategies to the PCDC to get their input on what they thought would be feasible. Sorry, I'm sharing the right page.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll blow it out a little bit so we can see them all. But these are the 17 strategies. These are also listed in our housing futures plan, in the back. And I spoke with Robin DeFalco at DOLA this morning and had several conversations. Prop 123 funding is going to be extremely competitive, as all municipalities are working towards their commitment goals. In about 1.5 years, there's going to be a huge crunch on development. So I'm trying to get this ball rolling a little earlier and at least get the codification of some of these strategies if possible. So I asked the PCDC to choose 4 off of this list, with the caveat that again, the expedited review, that's required by DOLA. That's what we have to do this commitment cycle. So they really chose 3 out of this list as other qualified strategies. The ones that they chose, I provided within my staff memo. Those were the expedited development review for affordable housing up to 120 AMI, density bonus program for housing needs, inclusionary zoning, and other novel and innovative creative approaches housing authorities. And that falls under our current initiative that we're sharing with Gilpin County and the town of Nederland for the feasibility study for the Housing Authority. I'll just run through a few others. So those 4 are what the PCDC chose. A few others that might be beneficial to consider that weren't really possibilities when we had this discussion. but the use of vacantly public owned property for affordable housing development. Now that the town has acquired a few lots, that might be on the table for discussion. A dedicated funding source to subdivide affordable housing infrastructure costs and fees. So I meet with the prospective developers for affordable housing. It seems a lot these days, and the largest barrier to affordable housing in the town and across the Front Range is water costs. That's extremely expensive, especially if you're not wanting to put up multifamily complexes. So if you wanna build, smaller, homes, the average cost, I think, at least what we saw last week, was about $50,000 upfront for your share and tap fees. And that's a huge hurdle for developers to get over if they're trying to provide, any level of density. And don't quote me on that number. I'm not in the utilities business, but I think that was what I saw last week. So that one, and I spoke with Robin this morning about it, and she said that other municipalities are starting to think about how they can have a separate, affordable, water fund that they can dedicate those costs to. And then the other one I wanted to discuss, and this other novel, innovative, creative approaches, general, so it's wide open. I believe we can also justify our joint housing coordinator with the town of Netherland and the town of Lyons. So that's probably a strategy that we'll be able to qualify as well. So we've already got three, because we made changes to our ADU code a few months ago to go from conditional use to permitted by right. So we've already we have three that I think, with some good writing, we can justify the DOLA already. But again, the more that we adopt, the more competitive we will be for funding through Prop 123.
So question about the ADU use by right. ADUs are used by right in all single family zoning districts in the town.
Yeah.
They are. Absent the statewide legislation. Okay.
So that's kind of the end. I stand behind the PCD's decision of the four. The inclusionary zoning piece, I will say, will be a bit of a heavier lift to figure out how it can be unique to Lyons. Boulder County and all agencies within Boulder County have committed to a 12% affordability. So that would be kind of that benchmark to any language that we write for inclusionary zoning, that if it's a development, that at least 12% of those units fall within that space. But again, that one will take some thinking about how to make it work and tailor it to the town of Lyons.
All right, I have some opinions, but let's do questions. Any questions?
I'm a little puzzled. You just said the town has acquired a few lots. What are you talking about?
So the triangle lot on McConnell, and then there's the other two that we had acquired sometime, the one that Justin Doles was talking about.
He's just saying there could be potential for some town lots that we could dedicate as our contribution to an affordable project.
I have a question about those. We have a property tour scheduled for tomorrow. Would we have time to include the triangular lot and the Carter Porch restoration piece?
It was posted as Boulder County IGA properties, but I can consult with the attorney and see if we can.
Well, we can always just write on
Always
it.
be happy.
Even with
I
that.
would love to get eyes on that point.
It's not a meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a meeting because they'll be, yeah.
But there's lots of the towards our housing and then the IGA, so I think
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay,
I think it'd be beneficial.
Okay.
we can certainly try.
Go ahead.
What property within current town limits would you inclusionarily zone?
The Tebow property would be a great recipient of inclusionary zoning. We're in discussions with another gentleman who wants to develop housing on a lot. And with does not mind providing, affordable units. Again, what I'm trying to set up, and I believe what the PCD is trying to set up is the proper balance of carrot and sticks that the town can give something, but then we also can ensure that we're meeting the community's goals.
Couldn't the town in a development agreement, if it ever comes, and we talked at the workshop about how many water shares would be needed to do something on residential part of the T-bill property, couldn't the town simply, in a development agreement, require a certain percentage of those any housing units that somebody wanted to build there to be affordable or attainable?
I think you could, but they're wanting to see a policy. So if we had similar to this cash in lieu, I do think we should also have a cash in lieu policy for boards to follow, you know, for guidance. So each individual time, you should, it kind of like a conditional use, you know, but yes, I think that's the way we would do it. If it's an appropriate develop, you know, if it's not just a single family house being built, we should consider this for sure. But I think they want to see that we've adopted a policy that says we are going to require that in all developments over so many units.
Do you think they care if we have any property left in the town limits that policy could apply to or not?
Probably not.
To be honest, probably not.
Although there are a lot, we have lots in town that are still close to 5 acres. I mean, if they would sell, you could put a closet.
And the only thing I'll note about that question is, at least speaking with the development community and having worked in the development community, a large barrier to development is lack of predictability, and having that stake in the ground and having it codified somewhere, or at least in a policy. I think that helps developers latch on to these projects. Waiting to go through and paying for a team to draw a plan, go through the development plan process, and then get into a development agreement and have that come as a condition as part of that agreement might not be the predictability that developers are looking for.
So question for you, sorry.
Sorry.
Um,
I had a follow-up question on that.
Go ahead.
So both Longmont and Boulder have inclusionary zoning policy. Do you think it might not give Lyons an advantage? And then under their inclusionary zoning policy, the vast majority of developers have paid cash in lieu into a fund instead of doing a mixing market rate and affordable or attainable units. I saw 85% somewhere mentioned for Longmont. Do you think the fact that Lyons didn't have a required 15% or more affordable attainable might give Lyons a competitive advantage in attracting a potential developer here rather than Boulder or Longmont, because they obviously don't like most of them mixing in those different types of units?
I mean, I've seen inclusionary zoning work all across the Mountain West and mixing housing types in the same neighborhood. So I don't think that's a deterrent if you're attracting the correct developers. And that's where kind of striking up these relationships comes, you know, and is important. But again, I think the community enjoys having a predictable process, and whether it's, we don't go there, that's just fine. You know, and we can work other ways, but, you know, again, it's all throughout Lyons Thrive that we want vibrant neighborhoods with mixed housing types, mixed income types. So this is, again, by offering density bonuses or some other bonus in one hand, and then saying, well, since you're getting these, you have to dedicate 12% of these lots or units to be affordable. You know, that seems to be a common and well-working approach. Now, inclusionary zoning also fails terribly in some communities. And, you know, I'll be open to say that, but there are models that work as long as you don't just go copy and paste the larger municipalities inclusionary zone and try to tailor it to your code.
That's all my questions for now.
You actually asked that question.
No.
Go ahead.
I have a question regarding the number of strategies. So because it's going to be so competitive, are you saying the more strategies we adopt, the better?
That's
Yes.
correct.
So right now, what's in yellow and green here, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different strategies that have been highlighted.
Mhm.
And possibly we can include the use of vacant publicly owned property, the first one. for affordable housing, so that could be 6 potentially.
Yeah, so when I'm riding, or hopefully when we get the housing coordinator, position when we get someone, they will be writing justifications for us meeting our strategies and what strategies we've adopted and how they've worked. But I see that, again, both other novel, innovative and creative approaches, I think we can easily say that those are strategies that we have already adopted as a community. I don't know that for sure, but again, in speaking with Robin Dola, she's fairly confident as well that those are 2 strategies that the town has already adopted.
Sorry, could you give me an example of a novel, innovative or creative approach that we've adopted that you could use?
Yeah, so our feasibility study for the Peak Housing Authority.
Okay.
And then our joint housing coordinator between Netherland lines to bolster our planning efforts.
Can I ask, why the PCDC was not interested in allowing small square footage residential unit sizes?
I don't know. I could go
That's-
back and ask that question.
Well, that's a need that we hear. I think, I can't remember how many people wanted a 1-bedroom apartment
That's true. At least 30.
when Summit opened their applications.
Mhm.
So I would, I would encourage us to, as a board, look at the policies that might actually make a difference faster for the people who.
Yeah. I agree with that fully.
I'll have to check. I don't know if we regulate the size of residential units.
We don't. So
So if we don't, then we're already doing that. If we don't regulate the size of residential units, then by definition, we're already allowing small square footage residential unit sizes, correct?
Yeah, but that wouldn't be, since we've been doing it, that wouldn't be a strategy that we could.
wouldn't the reduction of, putting in a process for the reduction of the size of a lot on the 1929 plat count toward that?
It says units. I could
Well, I
check.
mean, but that encourages
Sure.
then smaller units on.
For 0 lot line development, you do that.
And I didn't think about that, the 1929 plat, either. That could fall under other novel and innovative. So that might be another opportunity.
Reducing our lot size, yeah.
And I have one more question. I realize this is a PCDC resolution, proposing these strategies, but is there any way to include the Housing and Human Services Commission on, get their input as well? I feel like housing is part of their mandate, and
Sure.
I know they'd like some specific goals.
Great to have a recommendation from both.
Yeah.
Well,
Is there
that,
a date we need to adopt these by?
November 28th, 2026. So we
Okay.
got some time.
well, it's a good thing we're working on them now. Trustee Dashi, would you like to recommend that the direction be staff reach out to Housing and Human Services to get their input on this?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
And I've got it on my calendar for that next
They
meeting.
were invited to the PCDC meeting, weren't they? Did you have a couple of them?
No, not from Housing and Human Services.
How does the rest of the board feel about that direction?
Get HSC input, sure.
Okay, there's the direction.
Okay.
But,
Go ahead, Trustee Browning, did you have something to add?
yeah, so that I don't get accused of sandbagging or surprising everybody later, I'd like to make a few comments about things like inclusionary zoning and density bonuses and lines. Just, if you want to direct, if you want to
Go ahead.
survey the opinion of at least one board member.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, I will. I don't believe either of those strategies make one bit of sense in the lines. If what we're doing here is just checking boxes with DOLA to get brownie points, I guess I could see that as something we would want to do, but let's not fool ourselves. There is no property in Lyons that's not already zoned in our current town limits. If we end up annexing the back end of the Tebow property and zoning it R3, we can control what goes on there. We can offer, we can set a 10%, a 12%, a 6%, whatever we want to there. We don't need an inclusionary zoning ordinance to do that. Anybody here can run a Google search, or anybody watching or any citizen can run a Google search, does inclusionary zoning work? And you will come up with dozens and dozens and dozens of articles, pro and con. They're probably relatively evenly split. a common theme you will see running through those articles is inclusionary zoning works best in municipalities that have thriving, growing, expanding, development. That is the opposite of Lyons. We are built out except for about 8 lots in town. So we're taking strategy, we're doing exactly what you suggested. We're taking strategies that bigger municipalities like Longmont and Boulder have done, and we're trying to adopt them for Lyons when they don't make any sense here. And I think density bonuses are the same thing. There's no place to use a density bonus here. And because of our tiny compact size, there may be downsides to doing density bonuses, just like if you impose a minimum percentage inclusionary zoning requirement, you may scare off developers that otherwise might want to come here because they don't want to build in Longmont or Boulder anymore because of their 15% plus policies. You could actually do harm to potential real housing development in Lyons by adopting these policies. If you want an innovative incentive to check another box with Dole and get another brownie point, I'm going to suggest one during the budget process, and that's that the town of Lyons itself, if it needs to, offer property tax incentives and rebates for adding more ADUs. And they would also ask Boulder County, which has a bit much bigger portion of the property tax mill levy totally, to join with us in that for a limited number, a trial run, and basically whether we can encourage more ADUs through tax incentives, otherwise known as put our money where our mouth is. I would rather see things like that done that have the actual real world possibility of getting more affordable or attainable housing in Lyons and adopting policies that make no sense for Lyons built out status and may actually discourage development here. I think these just adopting strategies and pretending they're going to work in Lyons just as 4 points with Dole is not the way to go.
Well, and so trustee Browning, I think that what you just suggested would fall under other novel, innovative, creative
Yep.
approaches general.
Exactly.
So, okay. All right, thank you. So with that, staff is comfortable, we're gonna move on. Okay. Discussion direction on noise ordinance update and process. So we had a workshop on this earlier. It sounded like there was general agreement to explore the noise ordinance, which we know we all wanna do that. I think the question that staff probably has right now, at least one of them, is what does that process look like? What do we want staff to research? How do we want staff to engage with the business community and the residents? Kind of what are the, and we don't need to go into the details because you all are the experts in that, but what are the areas we want to focus on? And do we want to do a task force? Do we want to have staff collect the information presented to us? How do we want to go forward?
Well, earlier when you were listing the different categories of people you would like to include, and, there were businesses that you mentioned and, property owners, and there was a third category, and it reminded me of the IGA task force that we brought together with different, populations represented. And so I felt like that just sounded very similar, that if we had some success with the IGA task force, maybe this should be a task force if we have a variety of representation.
I love the idea of citizen task force. I think that process was probably, it was great for the IGA. It was also, it was time consuming. It was time consuming for staff. And, I think that this doesn't have to be quite as detailed, so I think and I would like to staff for their recommendation about, how we might want to engage with the public. But I think a task force like that might be overkill.
If I can make a suggestion, I feel like the Chamber of Commerce would be a really great partner for surveying businesses.
I have that written down, yes. I agree with you.
I've encouraged the EDC, Economic Vitality Commission, to get involved in this as well and let them know it's coming. There's another group you might want to get involved. It's in town called musicians.
Yes.
Yeah.
Many of whom make their livelihood and their ability to live at Lyons depends on their ability to get work here, at least part of the time. So I think they're, should be actively involved as well. We talked at the workshop that between fairly comprehensive survey that the Golden Town staff did of greater Denver metro noise ordinances and the 10 or so things that I had sampled several years ago and updated, I think we've got a pretty good sampling of the actual provisions of noise ordinances, time limits and decibels and that type of thing. But the other aspect of this that we also talked about is how do these places actually enforce it? Do some of them have code enforcement officers, you know, law enforcement officers that do this? Do some of them have a system like we've talked about in the Riverbend process of, or that we do, for example, with short-term vacation rentals where there have been noise problems in many places? Would part of our ordinance be having a contact person for each music venue in town, that if somebody thinks it's too loud, you call them first and see if they'll resolve it before you call the sheriff? And how do they act for the places that have decibel-based ordinances? Do they measure them with people's iPhones? That's what most people are gonna do on properties. They're gonna pull out their iPhone and they're gonna check the decibel. But is that what the town wants to do? Or if we need to do some sort of calibrated decibel meter, how much is it gonna cost? And from what I remember from the Grace Brothers, they're not as expensive as they used to be. But gather some information on how other towns actually and cities actually measure it. Do they keep one at the sheriff's office, and what kind do they use? And again, the Grace Brothers can give you price ranges and stuff. So gather information on the enforcement aspect of it, not just the details of the ordinance.
And I think staff has already suggested a spreadsheet with all this information.
Yeah, and it would also be nice if we could actually, if we have any more concerts, we could actually read the decibels that are coming from these areas.
Do we have, yeah, I mean, you
Do
can
it on
do
my
it,
porch almost every week.
you can do it, yeah, you can do it with your phone, but I wonder if one of the neighboring towns has a calibrated decibel meter, they'd be willing to loan us.
The phone stuff will not hold up in this.
Yeah.
I know, in court it won't. I
We can
know.
get them for fairly cheap.
But what I'm saying is that you make it to the receiving property line and somebody thinks that music's too loud, not everybody, that's what they're gonna pull out.
Yeah.
So, you know, but.
So, yeah, that would be an interesting,
We
we have some time.
Yeah, we also, we went through this in Teton County. There were a few concerts that were in right next to the national park. And they actually went and they did decibel tests. And they would play music at different decibel ranges to see how far that noise would travel. And that's how they set those limits as well. That might be fairly intensive in Lions following all the different, you know, noise channels, but that's also another thing. Again, to try to tailor as best we can to the unique geography of Lions.
Well, I think the first step is putting together that spreadsheet. And so maybe it's, you know, let's get that spreadsheet together and then let's see what your suggestions might be for community engagement with the constituencies we talked about, including.
And bring up at the town hall or something.
We'll bring it up at the town hall, but let folks know that that's certainly not the only opportunity they're gonna have to provide.
Yeah.
But Attorney Dittman said, right? Well, if there's not gonna be a decision until January, February, you can do an ordinance, but we never be able to enforce it, correct?
You can enforce it until the Supreme Court tells us that it's preempted.
It won't be
I doubt it.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, I wouldn't go so far as to want to have a second reading of an ordinance if we don't know what that decision is gonna be, but I think the timing is such that we can certainly still do the research.
And I think even if what the Supreme Court did rule that was preempted, I think you'd see a legislative fix probably the next session as well. Cause it's gonna be chaos otherwise, so.
Yeah,
That's what we need is more chaos.
Yeah.
we looked at this briefly at least 5 years ago, and the prevailing wisdom from ZML, and I think you at the time and everything was, no, you do have the authority to do this. And it would really upend a lot of, it would upend all this work that all these other towns have done.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that clear direction for you? It is 9 o'clock. We're really doing great. I would still like to take a short bio break, and then we'll come back. do trustee reports summary, and then I'll ask for a motion to go into executive session. And we'll finish that up. Sound good? Okay. How long of a break?
7 minutes.
Yeah, just between 5 and 10. So let's get back to Yeah, do you mind until we have the,
Just said, yeah, not until bugs start.
yeah, if the bugs start, close it, but it's nice to have the extra air, I think. Okay. Let's move on to trustee reports. Start with trustee Dottie tonight, if you're ready. Are you ready?
Almost.
I'll go.
Okay, trustee Lowell.
I have nothing.
Oh, geez, okay, back to me. All right,
Trustee Dottie.
yeah, I'm just reading on the confirmation for a date here. Okay. So, the Housing and Human Services Commission met last week. And they were specifically asking the Board of Trustees for direction on which specific housing goals to focus on. You know, when they're looking at the comprehensive plan, there are lots of, housing goals listed here, but they'd like to know what specifically do we need help with.
Okay.
So I think that including them with the strategies, for example, from the PCDC, that's, giving them some purpose, for the housing aspect. When it comes to human services, you know, they're still updating this Get Help Guide, which, they're going to be asking, actually, the only budget request they will have is to be able to make a few hard copies of this that they can put around, town for people who need to be able to find resources. And they are, exploring, you know, after attending the meeting around mental health crisis and the emergency preparedness, they're, gathering information from the sheriff's office and the fire protection district to possibly host a fair in the spring to prepare citizens for, emergencies, whether it's signing up for the, Office of Emergency Management, the vocal alerts, or whether it's, picking up a backpack that they're working on. They're working on these, putting together these emergency backpacks for, elderly citizens that would be by their door, or whether it's, finding out what happens when you make a call to 911. The fire department has a really great presentation on that. So that could be a community offering in the spring. The Arts and Humanities Commission met, on September 10th. And they also spent a lot of time talking about budget requests. I think budget requests were, due at the end of the week. So, I think they might be coming back with the same amount as last year. They talked about, the sculpture tour, that will be, so a tour of the public arts sculptures around town will be incorporated into the first Sunday that the chamber is organizing. The next one will take place on October 6th. So it sounds like there'll be a tour at 1 o'clock and there'll be a tour at 3 o'clock. And I think the guides might even be in costume, maybe as artists. I don't know, question mark. And what I was waiting confirmation for with the next art show. So there are quarterly art shows that take place, between the library and town hall. And it's an initiative of the Arts and Humanities Commission. I had October 9th written down, but then I saw it in the paper on October 16th.
I
So
think
now,
it's October 16th.
you think it's October 16th?
Yeah, because they're generally on the nights that Dr. Cobb meets, so I can't go.
Isn't that the library thing?
Yeah.
It's in my admin report as well.
Is it in your admin report? Oh, right, the 5th anniversary of the library is October 16th. Maybe that's why they moved it to the 9th.
Oh, I bet it is.
That's
yeah.
what's happening. Okay, so yeah. So just both dates, there's something happening at the library and they're both equally important. So if you want to reserve those 2 dates in the calendar,
What time is the art thing?
usually it's from 5:30 to 7, I believe. Right? And also, you may not be aware, but this Saturday at the Community Clarifier, there will be a dedication of the Clarifier as an International World Peace Site at 10 a.m. So in case you don't have that on your calendar, please add that. 10 a.m. And I believe that's all for me.
Thank you so much. You're welcome.
HPC meets tomorrow night. They will have a person making a formative presentation for us in the early part of the next board meeting, 3 weeks from now.
Great. Thank you. So, Trustee Browning?
The UEB met on September the 4th. They discussed the utilities relating to the Tebow property, same subject as our executive session and some of the details in the proposed agreement. UEB has discussed and has ideas on. They discussed budget requests and capital items in the budget, and Chairman Kerr has transmitted the results of their recommendations, and we'll take that up as part of the budget process, I'm sure. And then
discuss the wastewater treatment facility draft, document from the JBA. Yep, Trustee Lowell and I are meeting with JBA and staff tomorrow about it.
Thank you.
Oh, and the EDC meets on Wednesday.
Thank you.
So Parks and Rec, they met, and actually I could pass these out. They talked about different things for the 4 parcels, what to do with, they made a recommendation on those 4 parcels and they recommended all of them, as parks and open space. So, and then also we discussed with some of the park hosts leaving and the difficulties with some of the things that they had with trash and everything. One of their suggestions that I thought was really good was maybe instead of having security, if it's possible to have park rangers come in for the times instead of security. So I don't know how that would work, but I thought that was a really good suggestion. And then the Saturday at the Orchard at 124 4th Avenue, we're gonna be having the apple cider pressing party, and there's gonna be ukulele sing-along for the kids, rock painting, butter making, ice cream. The ice cream will be homemade and pies will be homemade. And, what else? And then the apple cider pressing. So
What time
that's
is it?
noon to 3. The St. Brandon Invitational cross-country meet, which will have a lot of people here, goes from maybe 8 till 11:30 or something, so it'll be just after that.
Thank you.
One question.
Yeah.
Did you mention to the chair about the posting of the meeting notes? Because there's still nothing up there for the last 2 years.
I did, and I thought they said they had it and they were gonna look for it, and I thought they posted it.
Oh, yeah, Steph can follow up on that. All right, my turn. So I went to the St. Mary Valley School District Annual Mayor's Breakfast last week. Which was, it's always nice to get together with everybody and talk about the school district. I attended the CML District 3 meeting in Cherry Hills Village last week, which was kind of a haul, but it was worthwhile to hear what the other municipalities in our district are up to. And also to get a demonstration by Arapahoe County, Denver County, I think Douglas County, somebody else there, mounted police did a demonstration, just like 10 horses with cops on top demonstrating how they do crowd control and whatnot. So that was interesting to see. That's what we need. Yeah, that's what we need. That's what we need. Yeah.
Wrangle a few cowboys for that
Yeah,
job.
what I learned was that the officers, the mounted officers, they are their own personal horses. Yeah.
Do they get mileage?
The city and county of Denver guy told me he gets $100 a month.
That's it?
Yes.
Hmm.
They do it out of love. And then I went to the CML Executive Board meeting on Friday. The other thing I want to bring up is, and Victoria Administrator Stemson alluded to this earlier. The CDOT demand that the St. Breen Market and the Barking Dog pay them a lease amount to have tables on the CDOT right of way, which is the sidewalk. And so Neil Sullivan reached out to me and said, did you know about this? And I said, actually, no, I didn't. CDOT is demanding $6,800 a year from the St. Breen Market to utilize the right of way on the west side of the building and on the north side of the building. And, on top of the incredible rise in property taxes, And considering the fact that were it not for the state free market, we would actually be in a USDA food desert. So I contacted the folks at CML, I contacted some legislators and Neil wanted to be here tonight to speak at audience business, but both he and Connie are traveling. So his request is that the Board of Trustees as a governmental body send a letter of inquiry to CDOT about this practice. So if everybody is okay with that, that is what I will do, and I will draft that for staff input.
Maybe the other interesting thing to point is CML independently contacted me earlier in the week about this, that apparently Lyons is the only place in Colorado where this is being done.
I was gonna say,
Yes.
in the main street of Estes Park.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not anymore, they're only enforcing it against us, and this is not unique to this issue with CDOT, they're doing other things in different communities, or only doing it in that community. So something kind of fishy is amok there.
Well, like I said,
We don't
I
know,
think
but,
in
yeah.
other communities, they take over the maintenance and responsibility of the state highway within their town.
But not
city limits,
all of them.
but not all of them.
Like Morrison is not, for example.
But I'm wondering if that's part of it, is because Longmont and Boulder and Estes are all have done that. So they maintain it, they snow plow it, where we still have CDOT all do all that. We have not taken the ownership or repair or maintenance of Main Street. So, but it's gonna be interesting.
Empire, Colorado, we represent, doesn't have that.
So there are some, this opens up some questions, there's some discrepancies, you know, what about the art that we have in CDOT right, you know?
We have an agreement with them for that.
We do,
Mhm.
okay.
We have an agreement for incidental, art, signs, banners, all that kind of things, lights. But when it's a private business that is profiting from their public property is how they're.
Well, there's also, apparently there is a waiver process for this and, the owners of the St. Vrain Market were not made aware that there was a waiver process. So there are some questions and so I'll write a letter to ask those questions and we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right. Finally, in more exciting news, at a different event, I met some folks who want to open a golf cart dealership and repair facility. They, I met them at a social event and they were wanting to locate it in Lafayette and I said, why? I don't know. So they're coming out to, I'm gonna meet them here tomorrow. And so I would like to request if I can a town golf cart, because mine's just a 2-seater. What time to drive them around? Noon? Awesome. Yeah, so we'll see if we can convince them to at least do a satellite here, but it would be great to drive down Main Street and see a golf cart dealership.
Or not drive down Main, but actually like see it on Main.
See it.
Yeah, you can try.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, that is all I have. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
Move to executive session, Jake.
Oh,
Action items.
yes,
Yeah, sorry.
sorry about that. I got excited. Action
I'm
items.
gonna do those for Maria. We are going to reschedule the SFC update for November. We are going to look at installing additional speed limit signs on Second Avenue and other areas that are in need of that. We will place the Carter Court opportunity, for lack of a better term, on a future agenda. The clerk's office will check for other ballot issues that had implementing ordinances that may have been missed over the years. I will notify student advisory committee appointees that they've been appointed and encourage them to find. We will, staff will do our water share value research with experienced brokers and other municipalities and potentially bring back a resolution to accept cash in lieu at an amount to be determined. We will have our planning staff present Housing and Human Services with Prop 123 qualifying strategies and get their recommendations. We will start our work on the noise ordinance as described, and the mayor will send a letter of inquiry to CDOT regarding their right-of-way practices.
In the admin report, you mentioned a grant, for safe routes to schools.
Is there an interest in us applying for that?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Thank you.
I know, I was like, when did that do? It feels like November.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else I missed?
Trying to get one?
I need to get more information on the briefing schedule, decision schedule for Hobbs v. Salida, which is the noise ordinance case.
Mhm. Thank you. What else? Thank you. Is there a motion?
I move to go into an executive session being conducted pursuant to CRS sections 24-6-4024E and 24-6-424B to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations. Develop a strategy for negotiations, instruct negotiators, and specifically determining negotiating positions and strategies regarding the Tebow annexation agreement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Votes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And then do we,
Close this meeting.
yeah,
Yes.
we'll close the meeting. Do we need to start another